I want to welcome everybody to a special edition of, we're going to call this Iowa Hawkeyes Live Citrus Bowl Preview. We're going to talk about Iowa's placement in the Citrus Bowl versus a very familiar face, and that is an Iowa guy, Mark Stoops, of course, the head coach at Kentucky. We're going to talk about that with, as you can see, Coach John Patterson, who is back with us. Long trip to Indy. That's about 15 hours of driving or better, Don, round trip. How'd the trip go? And I know the game didn't go so well, but how did the vacation go?
Yeah, it's really not that bad a trip. I think it's maybe 4 hours and 45 minutes, something like that, actual drive time. Talking about one way, of course. So round trip, maybe 9.5.
How was the hotel? Did you guys end up going to the basketball game on Friday night? I forgot to ask you that.
We did not. We actually brought dinner into our motel room and enjoyed the game on TV. And I think the tickets, if we could have gotten a ticket at that point, it would have cost me an arm and a leg. And we're going to watch them against Illinois on Monday night. So I thought, we're seeing them on Monday night against a quality opponent. So that's okay. We'll watch them on Monday night, and we'll save all of our fan bullets for Saturday night in Indianapolis.
Well, Don, I will say before we get to the football game, that was an impressive basketball game from a team that I didn't expect to be competitive at all without Keegan Murray in the lineup. And they nearly
Absolutely.
Lafayette.
Absolutely. You know, sometimes, Corey, you talk about gaining confidence even in losing. And without a doubt, men's basketball gained confidence on Friday night because they played a wonderful game against a quality opponent. And that really speaks well for what might happen over the rest of the season. I'm excited about how they're going to play on Monday night.
Absolutely. So Iowa basketball, we got a great season ahead, hopefully. And of course, Coach Gary Close will be with me over at From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube, recapping each and every game, including tomorrow night's game. Big game, like Don mentioned, home opener for the Big Ten Conference, and an opportunity for Iowa to get a really quality win on the resume. Still just early December, and of course, Cy-Hawk game on Thursday. So a full week ahead of Hawkeye sports. Let's talk about what happened last night, Don. 42-3 Iowa with the defeat. I know we talked briefly over the phone following the game, and you were en route back to your hotel. We talked about the early missed opportunity. Gavin Williams, the throw to Monty Pottebaum, which I keep saying, and I've talked to a couple Iowa fans here recently, just in the last few hours, and they've made the comment, unprompted, mind you. They've made the comment, boy, had we connected on that Williams to Pottebaum pass, I know Michigan fans would say this is, a farce, but you wonder how it would have changed the game. Don, you're up 7-0 early. You already got a 3 and out. Instead, you end up having to kick a field goal and miss one from inside of 30. How much was that series of events? How much did that influence the rest of the game?
We'll never know, but certainly I can guarantee you the game would have played out differently. I believe that based on years of experience. And I'll say it this way. Usually monumental upsets, if you want to call that a monumental upset, if we'd have been able to pull it off last night, that's probably not a fair description because a monumental upset would be described as a win over when you're a 28-point underdog, not 10.5. So those kind of monumental upsets invariably start off with an unlikely beginning to a football game. Maybe the decided underdog gets a score and takes an early lead, and then maybe there's a turnover, maybe there's a trick play, whatever the reason might be. All of a sudden, it's a 2-score game, and the underdog is the one with the lead. And at that point, I've always warned our guys, I'll say it this way. If we're playing against somebody that we're supposed to be able to beat with not a whole lot of difficulty, I always explain to them, understand this. What we don't want to do, we don't want to encourage the opposition. We're a decided favorite in this game. The last thing we need to do is give them any encouragement because I'll promise you this. If they're hanging around in the game for the longest time, at that point, I guarantee you we're going to see a fanatical effort out of the other team. It's going to be a greater effort than you've ever seen them demonstrate, simply because for once they have a chance to pull off the unexpected. So congratulations if you put yourself in that spot, because that's what you deserve. You didn't play up to your potential, and now you're fighting for your life. And the other team is playing out of their head because they cannot imagine that they might be able to pull this off. So that's the kind of thing you have to worry about when you're a decided favorite, is to be sure you don't offer any encouragement to the other team.
And Don, you and I talked privately before the game just about some of the parameters that were essential to victory. And of course, we talked with our listeners about some of the parameters. One of the more intriguing storylines heading into this game was the fact that Michigan had scored the opening touchdown in all 12 games of their regular season. And that includes a loss against Michigan State. But the point is, they're an 11-1 team doing that and having the lead at halftime. So my big thing to watch for was, well, first of all, I think we need to take the ball first. That was my thought, at least. Of course, weather wasn't at play. There was no wind. So I would have liked to have seen Iowa take the ball first. And then halftime score. Could Iowa find a way to get up at halftime? And so Iowa, of course, elects to defer. Did that decision surprise you?
Yes, it did. It did, simply because we were aware. When I say we, I guess it's more than just you and I. We're aware that Michigan had been able to score the first touchdown in all those games. And one of the things you want to do, of course, if you're the underdog, you try to find some way to make the favorite uncomfortable with how things are going. And my point in bringing it up is, if we scored the first touchdown last night, maybe some of the Michigan players wouldn't even understand exactly why they felt uncomfortable. Well, the reason they felt uncomfortable is the situation they were in is one that they hadn't been in the entire season. They might not even realize that. To my knowledge, it was never publicized in any of the print media related to Michigan football. It was never publicized that they had scored the first touchdown in 12 consecutive games. I never read it anywhere. I simply uncovered it after doing the research myself. And I certainly wasn't going to share it with Michigan at that point, or for that matter, with Iowa media either. But you can bet that I was going to share it with Iowa football. So it was disappointing. We did get a stop on the opening possession for Michigan, as you know. But my argument for taking the ball to start a game like that, when there's that kind of analytic that's out there, is maybe neither one of us scores on the first possession. Well, we get the first opportunity on the second possessions. Our second possession comes before theirs does. So logically, we have a chance every time neither one of us score on our first possessions or seconds, then we still have the first opportunity on the third possession. The point is, find a way to get on the board first with a touchdown. And as you know, Michigan failed the first time, but not the second. They converted on the second. They converted on the third also.
And
with
Don,
touchdowns.
Let's be clear. Just because Iowa found a way to get a 3-and-out in the first drive of the game doesn't mean it was the right decision. And I'm not saying, it's up for debate whether you want to say it was the right decision. I think you and I are on the same page that we would have liked to have seen Iowa take the ball first. But it's like it would be the equivalent, Don, of me going into New York City in the middle of the night and walking through a dark alley and saying, well, I didn't get mugged, so I guess it was a good decision.
Right.
That's how logic works.
The other thing, too.
Or you don't.
The other thing, too, Corey, that you're aware of, the last two games we played, even though our defense has been outstanding in almost every game, the last two games against Illinois and Nebraska, they took the ball on the opening possession and drove down the field and scored touchdowns in both those games. A matter of fact, it's the first time all year that Illinois had done it. And when you know it, they somehow did it against us. That would defy the odds too. But they did it. Two nice drives. And I remember vividly in the case of the Illinois drive, it was more pass than what we expected. It was about 50-50, as I recall. And then, of course, with Nebraska, you would expect that it would involve quite a bit of pass, and it did. So the bottom line is that we started off, even though we were playing to our strength, to put our defense on the field first. In both cases, they had failed to prevent the other team from not just scoring any kind of points, but scoring an actual touchdown. So that was one more reason in my mind that we should give it a go first.
And Don, let's be honest. We talk about playing to our strength. I had somebody that mentioned after the game, well, Iowa's strength is defense, so you put it in the hands of your defense. Let's be honest. You just brought up the Illinois game, and I can number. I don't know. I love to crunch these numbers. I'll have to do that at some point before the bowl game. But how many of these games, Iowa's 12 games, whether they won or lost these games, did they give up a touchdown on one of the first couple drives of the game. So as great as Iowa's defense is, they're not real stingy early going. I mean, it's just how Phil's defense seems to operate. It's frustrating.
Yeah, that I don't know. I simply knew for a fact that we had given up opening touchdowns in those most recent 2 games. Earlier in the season, I know you're right. In general, I think we have to get a feel for the opponent, get some idea of how they're trying to attack us. At that point, we make adjustments. Hopefully, we always make adjustments that are effective in taking away what they're doing to us. But I do think you're probably right. On average, we're more likely to give up a touchdown maybe in the first quarter of a game than we are in the second, third, and fourth, I think. I don't know that for a fact. Certainly, we knew for a fact it happened against Illinois and it happened again against Nebraska.
Okay, so from there on, Don, of course, the 2 big plays, I mean, Iowa's defense is predicated on not giving up big plays. So when you give up a couple 50-plus, 60-plus yard just home runs, how hard is that for Phil Parker's defense to overcome, given how they're built?
Well, realizing how few points we give up in typical games, it's a real body blow. I'll say that. It's difficult to weather those kind of things. Think of it this way. I think all year we'd given up maybe 1 run that was 30 yards plus. I think that was a stat that I believe Harbaugh mentioned somewhere in there. And all of a sudden, 72 yards from scrimmage. Is that right? 67. Which was it? 67, I believe.
Yeah.
Let me check my notes. Yeah, 67-yard run. But here's what happened. We had poor position from both of our inside linebackers. It was Benson got a little bit lost in behind a double team up front, couldn't find the ball. Campbell came from the backside of the play and overran it. And then what really put it out the gate was a missed tackle by Harris. We talk about leverage all the time. If you're playing corner, you need outside leverage on the ball that's inside of you. And the ball was inside, and wouldn't you know it, Corum escaped to the outside. And now he's down the boundary. And now, of course, it's more difficult for the rest of our pursuit from the other side of the formation to get to the ball. So that's how it happened. Our linebackers didn't take a good path to the ball. I'll say it that way. It's easier said than done, I'll admit. I've never played linebacker, but I have an idea that it is difficult to find the ball. And I've always been able to say the really good linebackers have a real knack for finding the ball. A good example that comes to mind for me that Iowa fans are familiar with is Josie Jewell. Josie Jewell doesn't have the world's greatest talent, but he's got a rare ability to get to the football. Another guy that comes to my mind years and years ago, I can't think of his name right now. It's terrible. A linebacker from Dubuque, son Jim. His dad was a great player. Who am I thinking of way back in time? One of our listeners will remember Jim Riley. Remember that name, Jim Riley? Jim Riley could not run very well at all for a Big Ten linebacker, but he just always knew where the ball was. And I've seen some great physical specimens that can't find the ball. And if you can't find the ball, you can't play linebacker. And our linebackers are good at finding the ball, but on this particular play, they didn't. They weren't able to get to it. It's hard to be right all the time because, let's face it, there are people coming at you, and the backs are elusive. And the bottom line is the linebackers didn't make the play, so now the ball is out the gate. That's okay as long as the DBs have good position. And then our corner lost outside leverage on the ball. Now the ball escaped outside of him. Now it's down the sideline, races on. And so that's the first one. And then, of course, the double pass victimized our young corner again. The bottom line, I made the note to myself, when you're playing in the back end and you're responsible for deep coverage, you've always got to be alert because there's always a chance you might smell a rat. And when I say smell a rat, wait a minute, this receiver's coming off, and even though they've thrown the ball out to number 7, which is something they like to do, this one, of course, was a backwards pass rather than the usual forward pass. For some odd reason, this receiver's coming off, and he's really not attacking me like he should. He was kind of creeping off the ball, and an experienced corner, an older corner, would would realize, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right because he's not really very aggressively attacking me. And then the next thing you know, of course, he puts on a burst and then gets behind Harris. So it's a young player's mistake. I say it that way. He'll probably never make it again. But in this game, of course, the damage was already done. So 2 plays, 142 yards, both of which happened in the first 9 minutes of the game. I made this observation. One team did a better job of aggressively calling a game on offense than the other. And the team that did a better job was obviously Michigan. We did have the halfback pass. We didn't execute it, but that's the only play that would qualify. Let's not forget also in the early stages of the game, there was a 29-yard reverse also to number 3. That was another aggressive call. So they had 3 huge plays in the first half, 2 of which were exotics, as we call them, 2 of which were trick plays. So that's the value of trick plays. I know you've heard me talk about it before, Corey, and I know you believe what I'm saying. It really is demoralizing to the other team when you fool them with a play. And they did it to us twice.
Absolutely. A couple comments I want to get to, and we can continue to talk about this game, Don. John says, I'm guessing Petras and Padilla look great in practice or good in practice, but they don't appear to have it on Saturdays. They're both 50% quarterbacks, make a good throw or two, followed by 1 or 2 terrible tosses. And I did see Brian, and I noticed Brian in the chat regularly. Appreciate him listening, but he says there needs to be a change at quarterback. I don't know who you're changing to, Don. I don't think, right. Let me just be frank. I don't think this quarterback room is very good. And I don't think I'm breaking any news to anybody on that, Don. Well,
one thing I made a note as I watched the game. I'm not done with it the second time. I watched it, of course, in real time, and now I'm watching it. Watched it in the stadium in real time, and now I'm watching it again on TV. But one of the things I wrote down is we have to do a better job. Here's what Michigan was able to do. They were able to play us pretty much the standard way on defense, and we couldn't do anything about it. And the way I talked about primarily is what I call man-free tight. Man-free tight means they're pressed up on the outside receivers. They're daring you to beat them down the field. They have a free safety that's back playing center field. They did run some zone blitz also. They pressured us off the field mostly with our equivalent of the cash player. Number 30, I believe he was. I would consider him a nickelback. I'm not sure. Maybe they count him as a Sambacker. I don't know. But anyway, a space player was coming off the edge a lot. And they were zone blitzing. They were dropping the defensive end on the other side some, which meant our tackle had nobody to block on that side. But in the meantime, of course, they're forcing us to block that space rusher, the guy coming from out in the field. We're having to block him or throw hot or get sacked. He came free too, so different scenarios. The bottom line is we didn't do anything to discourage him from being able to play press coverage on our outside receivers. You've heard me talk about it before, Corey. That's on the coaches. Frankly, we've got to go back and we've got to be sure that we have ways to discourage them from playing that way. And we never forced them out of it. So part of it is, of course, great execution by the quarterbacks and great receiver selection. Sometimes we pick the wrong guy. It's not easy to always pick the right guy. You heard me talk about pre-snap reads. Why it's so important to analyze who's manned up on who's playing off coverage, who's playing tight coverage. Who do I have the most confidence in being able to free up versus a particular defender? And frankly, sometimes we simply made the wrong choice. We had a receiver that was a better choice. We simply decided to throw the ball the other way. And I'm the first to say it's not easy to be right all the time, but that's what the really, really good quarterbacks do. They take full advantage of pre-snap reads. They try to get some idea what's going to happen here after the snap. And in general, they're able to pick the right guy more often right now than our guys can. And it's not all the fault of the quarterbacks. The responsibility also lies with the receivers. You got to become a better route runner. You've got to free up. You got to understand that you got to be able to use your hands too, to club a guy off of you when he's trying to grab you, because we know that they certainly try to grab you sometimes. So there's a lot of different ways to solve it. Part of it is on a better plan. You heard me tell the story, which is such a wonderful story. You know, the great Miami of Florida was afraid to play man coverage against Iowa years ago. And the defensive coordinator himself, after the game, told me, "You got too many man beaters. We'd be fools to try to play you with man coverage." You know, that's what we need to be able to hear out of our opponent. They'd like to do it, but they're afraid to because we got too many different ways to beat them. And right now we don't have enough ways. So that's a good thought especially for the winter months, you know, when we have a chance to work on those kind of thought processes before spring ball. And then, of course, in the spring, we can implement our ideas and have a better plan for next fall than what we have right now. That's a logical way to proceed with this. We got to find a way to discouraging people to press up on our receivers and dare us to beat them. We got to be able to do it. And there's responsibility for the receivers. There's responsibility for the quarterbacks to make the best choices. And then, of course, there's a responsibility in the coaches to come up with newer and better ideas of how to get people free. So all those guys can help to make it happen better for us next year than this year.
I'll answer this question. Kurt says, what is the chance that Kirk fires Brian? 0%, Kurt. Not happening. Not happening. Is there a chance that at some point Brian could move on? There's a chance, but he is not going to be fired. Not under this administration. Ray says something or someone has to change next year. What is it? I believe it's the prior, right? I think it's the something. I don't think it's someone. I mean, I'm not saying it someone doesn't need to change. I'm not going to comment on that at this point, I guess. But Don, does this offense need to be overhauled? And I know that's a strong word, but as bad as they rank, and people have gotten upset with me because I've called it, you know, bad or terrible. I mean, they're third to last in total offense, I believe, in the Power 5. This is a very poor offense, and it hasn't been good for a long time, but this is about as bad as it's been. So what do you change? I know there's a lot, but I mean, philosophy, I would have to think philosophy in general. You have to take a broad approach at this.
Yeah, one of the things that came up during the game, I wasn't aware of exactly where we stood, but they mentioned it as we made our way into the red zone. According to the TV people, I don't know if it's true, red zone touchdown percentage, 44%. You remember seeing that? Last in the Big Ten. So touchdown percentage of 44%. That was really alarming to me when I saw it. I don't know that it's true. That's what Fox Sports is saying. So I suspect it's true. I also know sometimes that those stats are not entirely accurate. You've heard me talk about it. The way I figure red zone efficiency, if you've got the game won and you're in the red zone and you're taking a knee, I'm not counting that as a failure. I know for a fact that the NCAA counts that as a red zone failure. So I don't know if their stats are entirely accurate. If they are accurate, they're generally accurate, of course, because in an entire season you might have 2 red zone failures that really were not red zone failures. You know, maybe you were simply taking a knee at the end of the game. Right. They counted it as a failure. So maybe there are a couple of those in there since we have won 10 games. You know, happened to us a couple of times. I know it did. That we were in the red zone taking a knee, and okay, that's a failure, but only according to the computer. The way I figured, it's not a failure because we're not going to count it. So I don't know if that 44% is accurate, but I would guess at the best we're around 50% for touchdowns in the red zone. That's simply not good enough. Too many field goals, not enough touchdowns.
Chad Leistico, the Des Moines Register. I'm not a Register subscriber, but I did see that he wrote a column today. And I don't normally bring up just random Iowa media columns or articles, but he did write a column today that the headline was basically that Iowa's offense needs to make a major change, basically saying it needs to be overhauled. I saw Pat Hardy, who I know you do a show with on Monday mornings on KCJJ in Eastern Iowa. He basically said the same thing on Twitter, and maybe I shouldn't paraphrase what he said, but you know, that I thought that was interesting. We're starting to see the media, and I don't know that we always. I mean, there are a lot. There are reasons to be lenient with. I don't. I know that sounds like I'm promoting favoritism, but with Brian and what Kirk has brought to this program, I think you're going to be a little bit more forgiving because he is Kirk's son. Whether that's right or wrong, I think that's just natural because Kirk has given a ton to this program. But we're in year, I think, 5 or 6 now, somewhere in there of Brian Ferentz. But the thing is we look back at the numbers during previous offensive coordinator administrations, and I'm talking about Kenny O'Keefe, I'm talking about Greg Davis. As far as offensive rankings back then, Don, they weren't that different. Like,
Right.
they were maybe a little bit better. I mean, certainly, I think any season was better than what we've had this year offensively. So what is the philosophy? What is the philosophy that this administration prides itself on offensively? How would you sum it up?
Well, our philosophy for sure to begin with is to not ever beat ourselves. That's our goal, is to never say that we shot ourselves in the foot. We do a good job of that. We're less penalized than most teams. We turn the ball over less often than most teams. Defensively, we have all eyes on the quarterback when he's throwing because we're so much his own team, and that gives us a chance to react to the ball. Underneath, defenders do a good job of getting their hands up. So the tip passes, of course, sometimes end up with our possession. And those kind of things do hold up from year to year. We've prided ourselves on being good in the red zone on defense. Generally, we've been average or above average on offense too, but this year I'm afraid it's going to be below average. I haven't done all the numbers, of course, because the last game was only played last night, but I'll get around to it. And I think it's safe to say that we got a lot of room for improvement with our red zone offense too. So from one year to the next, you just got to have some honest assessment. Coach Fry always used to talk about honest assessment. Let's not try to fool ourselves here. This is not good enough. And how can we change it? Well, we can change it by giving our players the opportunity to be bigger, stronger, faster from one year to the next. They have to learn from their mistakes. They have to develop better technique from one year to the next. I don't doubt that we'll do that, get that done. But then part of the responsibility lies with the coaches. Maybe we can come up with a better plan than what we have. To me, if there's a coach that thinks he's got all the answers, that's probably a pretty good time to retire, because you never have all the answers. And I think I'll give you a specific example. We're getting ready to play in a Rose Bowl, and we're practicing. This is I believe our last of 3 trips to the Rose Bowl. And George Allen called up, the legendary George Allen from the Washington Redskins, who at age 75 or so was coaching, I can't remember where now, Long Beach State, I think, maybe. I believe that's where it was, Long Beach State. And he called up and he said, Coach Fry, I'd like for you guys to consider practicing at our place. And we did. We practiced it at Long Beach, as I recall. I might be wrong on the school, but that's the memory I have, is it was Long Beach State. Anyway, here's George Allen watching us practice. And the thing that amazed me, I was a guy then. I was coaching, of course, on offense. And here's George Allen asking me questions. And I remember thinking, this guy's a Hall of Fame football coach, and he thinks he can learn something from me. That really taught me a lesson, because I'm thinking, Lord knows I can learn something from everybody else out there coaching. And it was just interesting to see. One of the reasons he was a great coach is he always thought he could learn more about football from anybody and everybody. I guess if he was asking me, then that suggested to me he might be asking everyone that he ever ran into. Maybe I can learn something from this guy. And I just thought it was interesting that George Allen was like that. I was never a Redskin fan, incidentally, because I was always a Cowboy fan. So I hated the Redskins. But I did develop a new respect for George Allen. And the crazy part of that, I think our listeners would find it interesting. Here we are, we're in the Rose Bowl the day before the game. We always go out and have a team photo that day, and the players see the stadium for the first time. And we find out when we're in the stadium, because the day before, which was our so-called Thursday practice, Coach Fry invited Coach Allen to be on the sideline with us, and he had immediately accepted. He said, I'm thrilled to be on the sideline with you guys. I don't know how much help I'll be, but I'm honored that you would invite me to be there. And the very next day, which was the day before the game, we found out when we were in the Rose Bowl, George Allen had died that day of a heart attack. And he was a fitness nut too. Maybe he was closer to 80. I can't recall his exact age. But I honestly believe that's one reason we didn't play very well in the first half of that game, is because I think it really set the team back, because they had all gotten to know George Allen a little bit because he was at practice every day. And, of course, he had addressed our team too because Coach Fry gave him the chance to address our team. And they knew he was going to be on the sidelines with us. We at least thought that. And then the very next day we found out he'd fallen over dead. So it's a tragic set of circumstance because we would have been thrilled to have him with us on the bench. And it sounds kind of crazy, but in my mind, it seemed like we were a little bit off because I think it threw us off as a team a little bit to have a loss. And he really, at that point, they felt like he was a little bit of our Hawkeye family, because he's the one that invited us to practice at his facilities. And it's just an interesting story. I don't know that story ever, I don't think too many people are aware of it, but that's all a true story.
That's really amazing. Monty says Arlen Bruce played quarterback, running back, wide receiver in high school. I'd like to see him as our Wildcat option, at least have the threat of passing out of the Wildcat. Here's one of what I would say about some of the, I don't want to say wrinkles, but that's kind of what this is as it relates to Iowa's offense, the Wildcat. We've seen over recent past 4 or 5 years, we've seen trick plays on special teams come and then go, and they've just disappeared. They worked for 2 years, and for some reason we haven't seen them again. Don, here's what I would say in response to this comment. To me, it seems like, and I agree with him, that Arlen Bruce is a versatile player. Lots of guys play multiple positions in high school, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate. But I do think Arlen Bruce would be effective in the Wildcat. But it seems like we've just shelved that, Don. And what that tells me, and you maybe tell me I'm wrong, but what that tells me is when we go with something for a while and then just throw it away, that tells me we really don't have confidence in what we're doing. We're just trying things and hoping that something catches on. And when it's not going as well as we'd hope, we just kind of move on to something new. But to me, we don't really have anything we're real confident in. Is that accurate? Is that possible as far as our game plan offensively from a season to season?
I don't know, Corey, for sure because I'm not in all the meetings that the coaches have. But I will say this. I do think people have asked me through the years, what makes you guys more difficult to defend than the average offense? I'm talking about our offenses of the 80s and the 90s because those were all Hayden Fry offenses, of course. And he and I were together, for 21 years. So we certainly thought along the same lines about offensive football. Obviously, he affected my thinking a lot. The bottom line is we're always thinking about how can we make it better? What can we do to make us more difficult to defend? And in general, to put in perspective, you're continually looking at new and unusual ways to move the football. And it might involve personnel. It might involve a certain formation. It might involve an unusual type of motion. It might involve trick plays. It certainly involves trick plays. That's part of the equation. And the bottom line, and here's how I'd explain it to a recruit. One of the reasons we're difficult to defend is because we have more plays than the average team. I'm talking about in the old days. We have more plays than the average team. And here's what's the secret to our success. We pick and choose. We don't run them all every week. There's no way we got time to practice them all every week. But we pick and choose those plays, which means we might run a play in game 3, and we might not run it again until game 7. But we pull it out because it applies to game 7 opponent, and we didn't run it in games 4, 5, and 6. So how much do you think that the game 7 opponent worked on it? We haven't run it ourselves in a month, and yet it's appropriate to pull it out and use it again. So, one particular concept might only be used 3 times a year. But it's used in those 3 games where it's most appropriate to be used. And the difficulty for the defense, if you're going to practice all the plays we've ever run, then you're going to run out of practice time, because there's too many plays.
Don, we're getting a little behind on the comments here. I want to answer Tyler's question. Do you ever recap Iowa wrestling? I am not an Iowa wrestling guy. Don, would you be interested in starting an Iowa post game for Iowa wrestling?
I'm afraid I don't know nearly enough about wrestling. I will say this. As a plebe at West Point, the 4 PE classes at West Point are wrestling, boxing, survival swimming, and gymnastics. And I actually enjoyed wrestling because there was no chance you were going to drown in wrestling. But in survival swimming, I promise you might drown. So I enjoyed wrestling and I enjoyed boxing, actually. Those two, and of course, it's all done by weight. So I had a little longer arms than the average guy at my weight, so I was able to score okay in boxing.
Okay, I disagree completely with this comment from Paul, and I appreciate Paul he's made some nice comments this evening. He asked a good question that we're going to get to. But he says we lost 42-3. The decision of deferring to the second half is meaningless. That's just false, Don, because to me, that indicates a mindset. It's a bigger issue than just we deferred to the second half. It's a continuous mindset of, in my opinion, and you're not going to call it this, but I call it the loser's mentality, as opposed to wanting to come out there and punch him in the jaw. Would you agree with that? Just because the final score is 42-3 doesn't mean that coin toss decision was something we're just going to ignore.
Well, knowing what we know about Michigan, the fact that Michigan has scored first, let's try to make them uncomfortable. Let's put them in unusual territory. Unusual territory for them would be being behind 7-0 because it hadn't happened. So with all due respect to Paul, I don't think you're right on this, because I promise you, one way to beat a team you're not supposed to beat is to make them uncomfortable. And scoring first would have made them uncomfortable.
Yeah, Kevin brings that up. It's a system issue. I agree with that. It's not. That's the thing. It's not just one issue, Don. And we've been trying to convince ourselves throughout this year that, if we get Alex Padilla in there, things are going to change. Don, that didn't change. I mean, some of the issues were corrected, right? There were some things that I thought Alex brings to the table that Spencer just cannot. More specifically, mobility. I don't think he's afraid to play. But we watched that second half, Don, and I know there was a hole. But Alex Padilla coming in that game did not turn things around. There are bigger issues. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson terrorized Iowa's right tackle. And I'm not going to name who he is. Everybody knows who he is. And it wasn't just him. I mean, he beat the other tackle as well. And I know Aiden Hutchinson is a potential Heisman candidate. I get that. But it was bad. And I'm here's what I'm surprised about. I did have a comment in here. I believe it was, let me see if I can find it. I do appreciate this kind comment from a Michigan fan. He says, "Hey, Corey, from a Michigan fan, just want to say that Iowa's D is something awesome. Good game. I think if they worked on red zone performance, it would help them out so much." Yeah, that I would agree with that completely. I think red zone performance would certainly help out. Paul wanted to ask you too, Don. Can you put in a good word for Brian Ferentz for the Western Illinois head coaching job? You don't have to answer that question. Let me find.
I don't think Western Illinois could find enough money to interest Brian in being there.
You're probably right. John says, now, again, I love John. John's on here all the time, but I would not agree with this either, Don. He says, O-line not great, but they held up better than I expected against Michigan. Don, we couldn't run the ball to save our lives. Did we have a single run of over 4 or 5 yards in this game yesterday?
I lost you for a second.
Don, do you feel that the offensive line at all played well? John says that he thinks that the offensive line held up better than he expected. I give him that. But, boy, I didn't think the offensive line played well at all.
I do remember this. At a certain point in the game, they flashed up the current stats. We had run the ball 20 times for 40 yards, 2 yards a carry. We ended up, even in the late stages of the game, we actually had as many or more rushing attempts as Michigan. So we made an effort to keep them honest at least. And we've talked about that before. You know, even if you're not putting up great numbers with your running game, you do need to try to find a way to keep them honest. That'll help you with your play action, of course. And in some circumstance, of course, it's okay to gain 3 yards. If it's 3rd down and 2 and you gain 3, then it's a good play. And for that matter, if you run a reverse and you gain 1 yard, well, that's not what you were looking for, but at least it slows down the pursuit for a while because they're reminded that you might run a reverse. So the bottom line is that we still didn't, and it's not all the fault of the line. You know, I think any good back would share in that responsibility. You know, we always talked about the best backs are the kind of guys that can make the first guy miss. Well, if you're going to get tackled by the first available tackler, then you're not a very good back. And it's hard to make a miss all the time, of course, because they're skilled at tackling also. But that's your goal, is to every now and then break a tackle. You're very familiar, Corey, with yards after contact. I'll give you a great example, a guy you're familiar with, Montgomery, who plays for the Bears, who used to play for Iowa State. That guy gets a lot of yards after contact. If he's healthy, I don't even know he's playing right now. But he's an example. That's why he's being paid a lot of money to carry the ball for the Bears if he's healthy. But while he was healthy, he did a good job of yards after contact in college and pro. So, backs need to find a way to make the first guy miss. If you're not very good at that, I'd like to think we can find a better back. The other possibility, if you can't make a miss, is at least your pads are down and you're fighting for the extra yard, what we refer to as the hard yard. Get the extra yard, maybe 2, maybe 3. It depends on how well they tackle you. If it's one player and he's smaller than you are, then maybe you can strain forward for 3 or 4 yards. Even if he does get you on the ground, you're fighting for that extra inch.
And I think John, referring to the O-line playing better than he expected, I wouldn't be surprised if he's also looking at early in the game, Iowa was not taking sacks. We were getting the ball out fast, but that was obviously something that Iowa was trying to do early to avoid the pass rush. And we were hitting basically, we were taking some shots, but they were single read plays, weren't they, Don?
Yeah, and so many of them fell incomplete, of course. If you want to refer to shot, fade routes versus press coverage, and our guy wasn't open. We did get the one DPI, which was helpful on that first drive.
Yeah.
Because that was a 3rd down, as I recall. Here's an alarming stat. Let me see what part in the game it was. Maybe after the first half, I believe they said our average 3rd down distance was 3rd and 11 in the first half. That's a problem because you've always heard us talk about being ahead of the chains and against Michigan. And, of course, that's one reason Michigan's defense is so good. It's hard to get ahead of the chains. We didn't do a very good job of it because we weren't that productive on 1st and 2nd down.
And Joby brings up the pass rusher. Yeah, obviously this is the best pass rusher duo in the Big Ten with Hutchinson and Ojabo. As far as affecting the conservative play calling, I'm just so tired of we're going to go conservative no matter what. We're afraid to go out and play with people. We got to figure out a way to get more confidence in our offense. I mean, I know that's sort of stating the obvious, but if we're going to go into every game, Don, just afraid to make mistakes, there's such a ceiling. There is such a ceiling. You're just never going to be able to compete year in and year out with the Wisconsins, the Michigans, the Ohio States, the Penn States, just not consistently. I
was going to say, Corey, one thing we can do to help, obviously we got to come up with more ways to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands in a hurry. A lot of those kind of throws, of course, are balls thrown behind the line. Michigan does it to us, so why shouldn't we turn around and do it to them? They put number 7 in the game. Half the time they're going to throw him a swing route. So one of the things you better do is you better be able to defeat stock blocks on the perimeter because they're going to put number 7 in space. They're going to throw in the ball behind the line. They're going to be trying to maintain those blocks, and you got to rally to the ball and tackle him. And of course, he's a good back too. He's, I think, a 4-star back, or he might have 5 stars for all I know. I don't really care how many stars he's got, but he's a good, solid young player. He's a freshman. Incidentally, he was the guy that threw the double pass too, right? He was the one that threw what appeared to be a halfback pass. It was a halfback pass, but it was a double pass.
Yeah, it was a wide open throw.
Yeah, we lateraled to him, and he made a nice throw. And I think I heard somebody say, in practice, he hits that throw every time. So that's what should happen, of course. He should practice it to the point where he's never going to miss.
I shouldn't call it a beautiful throw because, honestly, he could have put that ball 5 yards behind, and it would have been caught.
Yeah. Truth of it is, it wasn't really underthrown. It was really thrown with great accuracy. He caught it pretty much in full stride, didn't he? Yeah, you're right.
Looks like we're having an issue with our caller system here, Don. So let me see if we can get this working. I think we've had a couple people try to call in and not able to get through. So let's see if we can figure this out. Give me a moment to do that. If the Hawkeyes D shows up, they've got a shot at a close win, 20-7, maybe. Otherwise, they'll get pushed around all day and give up 30-plus points. That's just not. Is Iowa going to give up over 30 points to Kentucky? I'll be very surprised by that, Don.
I'll be shocked. And I don't know much about Kentucky. We're going to talk about Kentucky. I know. I do know Mark Stoops really well. Mark, to me, is much more like Bobby than he is Mike. By that, I mean he's a really even-keeled guy. And obviously he's done a good job at Kentucky. So we'll have our hands full. They're a good, solid SEC team. But having said that, Corey, there's a dirty little secret in the SEC also. everyone doesn't play everyone. So I don't know for sure what their best wins are. I don't even know if they played Alabama or Georgia this year. I'm not sure. But it'll be a difficult game to win. That's what bowl games should be, of course. In theory, if you have 40 bowl games, you should win 20 and lose 20, because invariably you're going to play a good team. And that's pretty much where we are. I think we basically won half our bowl games. I think this might be our 35th bowl game. I believe I heard that somewhere on the radio. So we're right around 500 in bowl games over all these years. It's what you would expect. Now, I've lost your sound, Corey, but you'll pop back up here in a second, I bet.
Can you hear me now, Don?
Yeah.
All right. I think we got our caller lines working, so let's see if we can take our first call. All right. Let's give her a shot. Thank you for calling. Iowa at the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey, it's Jared the actor again.
Hey, Jared. How are you tonight?
Hey, doing pretty good. Just a question, in terms of the bowl game and then also next year, I've been just supremely disappointed with Patterson and when they put in Padilla, it's pretty miserable as well. I mean, do you have any hope for next year, and what do you think they're going to do at the quarterback position?
Well, that's a good question, and Don, maybe you want to answer that question along with our question here in our chat. Can Iowa get a decent transfer quarterback similar to how Northwestern seems to be able to get one every other year? Although Northwestern tried to get the kid from Clemson, and that experiment did not work out. He's a five-star kid. So it doesn't always work out going to the portal. But going along with Jared's question, do you see Iowa making a change at quarterback, and if so, where?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of how many are on scholarship right now.
I believe just 3.
I did notice that, correct me if I'm wrong, Deuce was not on the trip, so I guess it's safe to say that he's very likely to be gone. Although, as you know, just because you enter the transfer portal doesn't mean you're very definitely leaving school. There's always a possibility that a guy would stay, but I bet the percentages of those that stay are probably 10% maybe. I don't know what the percentages are, but I'm sure it's not very high because they've already indicated they're serious about going somewhere else. And at that point, not hard to imagine that the team doesn't want them too much at that point. I don't know for sure. Obviously, a quarterback. Here's the reality of this, especially with the transfer portal. Back in the old days, I remember saying this. People say, well, the worst thing you can do is finish second on a recruit. If you go somewhere else, you might as well have been 5th. And I've always felt this mindset. To be second is better than to be 5th, because if they're unhappy at the school they go to, then who do you think they might call first? That school that was their second favorite choice, especially if the coach was civil and was respectable of their decision. So I always tried to be on good terms with every player, even if we didn't sign him, because there's always a possibility he'd contact you later on about transferring to your school. That's even more a situation now than it used to be. In the old days, of course, you had to sit out a year. But now that they're immediately eligible, I'm sure a lot of the guys that do enter the transfer portal, they end up going to the school that was second on their list to begin with.
And Don, Yakov22 brings up Spencer Rattler. Everybody's going to want Spencer Rattler. I think it was Vincent called in yesterday, said he heard rumblings that Adrian Martinez was going to come to Iowa. I have not heard that. I would be shocked if either one of those guys even visited Iowa as a potential destination.
Well, as you're aware, sometimes quarterbacks do transfer even within the conference.
You're right.
That's entirely possible, but I think it's kind of rare. I don't know. I don't know that we even have an interest in a QB transfer. It depends on the dynamics of your team, of course. It's safe to say that Spencer's really liked and respected by his teammates. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's one of our captains this year by vote of the team, right? Yeah. So are we likely to bring in a guy that's being accepted because we think he might perform better than Spencer? That's going to be a delicate dance within the structure of the team, I think. Those are the kind of things you think about, of course, are the ramifications as it relates to the entire team.
Did that answer your question, Jared?
I think so. Yeah. I just, that's the one component holding this team back, and nothing against those two guys, but it's just been, I think since Beathard, we've just struggled to have any type of dynamicism on the offense, and we've had great defenses, but I just really hope that Petrus isn't the man of the future for the next 2 years to watch struggle. So I don't know if there was a new recruit coming in, or if you guys knew of someone else that might be a changing of the guard. But
Carson May is coming in.
Anyway,
Carson May, the kid from Oklahoma, is coming in next year. I've heard good things about Joey Labus as far as fall camp and beyond. But again, that's just all speculation. I would hope that it'd be nice if you could get Carson May in early, get him in the spring. Don, do quarterbacks typically, is there a higher percentage of quarterbacks that enroll early? Is that a typical thing that happens?
Yeah, I think a lot of guys now roll early regardless of position. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if Carson was a mid-year grad. I don't know him personally, don't know anything about him other than he's from Oklahoma. But as you know, a lot of guys do graduate a semester early just so they can take advantage of spring ball before that freshman year starts up.
Anything else, Jared?
No, thanks a lot, Corey. Again,
Thanks,
like
Jared.
what you do, and talk again next time.
Always appreciate the call from Jared. Thank you. And I do want to just make a comment here. I had a conversation with Mark Rogers last night. For anybody on here, first of all, we appreciate the 233 people who are on here right now watching. But if you're coming on here to disrespect someone, whether it be Coach Patterson, Mark Rogers, somebody else in the chat, myself, we're not going to deal with it. All right. And that's per Mark Rogers. So we're going to be getting a moderator for our chat because some people can't be adults. And I've already bounced one person for making a nasty comment tonight. So if it continues, you're just going to get bounced and you're not going to be able to watch a show. If you don't like what we're saying, if you're not an Iowa fan, you can go away. We don't need you here. All right. There's plenty of shows that are Michigan shows or Penn State shows or whatever you're a fan of. But you're going to get bounced if you're going to be disrespectful. This is not the time or the place for that. So just wanted to say that. And again, if you have a problem with it, talk to Mark Rogers, who has made all of this possible. Talk to Mark. And, you're welcome to file a complaint if you want to. Let's get to our next caller here. Thank you for calling Iowa at the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Robert down in Arkansas. Long-time Iowa fan. Father was an Iowa fan. Grandfather was an Iowa fan. A couple quick comments. Number one, I was going to get Coach's opinion on this. You kind of hit on it yesterday, Corey, and it's about we're down in the red zone, fourth down. We decide to go for it instead of kick a field goal and get not guaranteed 3 points, because he did miss one. But at least, get a field goal and come out of there with 3 points. We always talk about how momentum can change a game. Well, I feel like, I'd rather go into halftime, 14-6 or 14-9 versus 14-3. And for me, not only did we go for it on fourth down, we ran the ball, and knowing that Michigan is a tough defense against the run. So I was going to get your comment on that.
Coach, I don't know, and I'm confused as to what play Robert's. Is it Robert on the line? I'm sorry, caller.
Yes.
And I'm confused as to what play Robert's talking about, Don, because I know there was the 4th and 5 when Iowa was down 21-3. And if he's talking about that play, I agree. To me, you take the field goal. It's like 4th and 4. Take 3 to get within 15, and we go for it. I did not agree with that call. Is that the one you're talking about, Robert?
Yes, it is.
Don,
yes,
what were your thoughts on that?
Okay, as I recall, we're in the middle of the third quarter, maybe. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, maybe late third quarter, but it was
late
like
third.
4th and 4. Or 4th and 4, clearly in field goal range.
Yeah, and yet 4 yards, it's hard to come by. What was our yard line at the time? Was it 4th and goal at the 4?
No. It was 4th and I don't know.
No,
it was
no.
4th and 4, maybe from the 20. I'm just guesstimating. It was clearly in Shudak's range.
I think we were in the red zone. I think maybe plus 15 or so, but I could be wrong. Anyway, regardless, we've got an accurate field goal kicker with a chance to put 3 more on the board, and we've had difficulty converting on any 3rd or 4th down with 4 yards needed. That's for sure. I would have preferred that we kick the field goal. And I realized that Shudak missed early, but I still have a lot of faith in Shudak. History says he's going to make most of his kicks. Most of them are going to be right down the middle. And the reason I'd say I prefer that we kick the field goal, and I realize, we got a lot of points to make up, but the bottom line, it's an 18-point spread at that moment. A field goal makes it a 15-point spread. So the field goal itself turns it from a 3-score game into a 2-score game. And that's significant.
Right. Exactly.
The 15-point spread's a problem. If you do score when you're down by 15, a lot of people make the mistake of going for 2 after that next score. You shouldn't do that. Go ahead and kick it. Now you're down by 8. Now you have a chance to tie it up on the next possession. It's not realistic. You've heard the term, let's not chase the points, right? Let's just not assume that we should always go for 2 when we're down by 24 or 22 or 19, whatever. But in the case of being down 50, you score a touchdown, now you're down by 9. Just kick the extra point, knowing that now you made it a 1-score game. If you fail, of course, at that point, now it's a 9-point spread, and now it's still a 2-score game. So the point is the PAT makes it a 1-score game, right? You go from a 9-point spread to 8. That's significant. Don't try for 2. And getting back to that scenario we had last night, 21-3, 4th and 4. A kick makes a lot of sense because at least it turns it into a 2-score game. And you've always heard me, Corey, say the magic number is 17. 17 requires 3 scores. 15 does not. 15 only requires 2. Right. So 15 or 16 is a lot different than 17.
I think we're all in agreement, Robert. I would agree with Don.
Another thing, too, was it seemed like to me, and it's been going on, to me, the way I watch it all year long, is if we have, we have a penalty called against us, whether it's holding, whatever the penalty might be, and we have 3rd and long, and we could be on the other end of the field, but we have 3rd and long. Let's say it's 3rd and 15, 3rd and 20. We decide right then and there, okay, well, this series is over.
Yep.
We're going to run the ball for a couple yards and then punt it.
Caller, we gave up on we gave up on 2nd down yesterday. It was 2nd and 23. Yeah. We were down at least 11 points, and we gave up on 2nd down.
And 3rd down.
I don't understand it. I don't understand
Don,
that at all.
Hold on a second, Robert. Let me ask you, Don. That's a great point. I'm glad Robert brought it up. Giving up on 2nd and I kind of understand on 3rd and 23 what Kirk's doing and trying to play the field, but good Lord, on 2nd down to give up? Do you shake your head at that too? You're a former OC. I mean, is that just ridiculous, or is it just being really conservative?
Well, if you're down, let's say it was 2nd and 23, and we were down 21-3 at the time, I think. Does that sound right? I believe that's right.
I don't know.
Yeah. To run the ball, put it this way, if it's a running play, it better have a potential to be a real explosive running play. An example might be even a draw play, of course, is not a bad call. How about Q draw on the part of Michigan on 3rd down and 12 for a gain of 15? That was a good call. We still haven't run Q draw with Padilla yet. If he's such a good runner, why don't we give him a try on Q draw?
I know.
But there are plays.
Anyone seeing that?
Yeah, no, you're not. You're not, Robert.
Well, the problem with throwing the ball on 3rd and 20, obviously there are some bad things that might happen. We know that. Maybe our quarterback getting sacked is not the end of the world. Of course, if he stepped up in the pocket, it might be -5. What's worse than just being sacked, of course, is being strip sacked. If the ball comes out, then that's a huge problem, of course, because if it's turned over, then that's a terrible play for us. But there are a lot of safe passes you can throw. Something as simple as a bubble or a jailbreak screen is a possibility for a big gainer. Slants, you've heard me say, Corey, slants always have a chance at least because you have a chance to run out with the ball In routes, you know what I mean by in routes, balls that are thrown in behind those linebackers. Those always have a chance, because the bottom line, if you can hit a receiver on the run, then you have a chance to convert it. And let's not forget that screen passes always have a chance. We've actually had some pretty good screens this year. So those are all possibilities on third and extra long. And yet they're still safe. You know, there's not a lot of risk involved with throwing a screen. There's not a lot of risk involved with running a draw play, rather than just a vanilla run.
To me, anything's better than giving up. I just don't understand.
Yeah.
We just seem to give up.
I agree
And
with you, Robert.
Also, well, thank you. One more thing right quick. I was watching Coach Stern's post-game interview, and he mentioned that Petrus was hurt in a play in his abdomen. Now, I don't know if that's the reason he was taken out of the game and Padilla was put in. I don't know. But he did mention that he was hurt during a play, and it was his abdomen.
Right. Yeah,
So I don't know.
He got hit hard, and I think the implication was that was why the change at quarterback was made. I believe that was implied there.
Okay. All right.
All right.
I enjoyed the show.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate the call this evening. And I do want to address this real quickly before we get to our next caller. Colin asks, when will Joey Labus get his shot? Colin, I think he's going to get his shot this next spring. And if not, if he's not given a fair shot at winning this job in the spring, shame on this coaching staff. That's what I'd say. And I'll say this. I mean, we can be critical of the coaching staff, and they deserve some criticism, as any coaching staff does at times. There's no question about this, Don. Quarterback's been a struggle enough. You are throwing all hands on deck, and you are looking at any solution, I believe, including the portal, but certainly you're going to give Carson May and Joey Labus a chance to win the job next year, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The real Hayden says, anyone know why targeting wasn't upheld? I only saw the replay in the stadium where it sure looked like helmet to helmet. I don't know what targeting is anymore, Don, so I'm not even going to try to answer the question. Do you have anything to offer on that? You watched it from the stadium as well. I thought it was. I watched it on every angle on television. The guy lowered his helmet. There was contact, but apparently you have to knock a guy out for it to get called.
There was clearly helmet to helmet on that play. And you can imagine the reaction in the stadium. There was a pretty loud reaction on the part of the Iowa fans when they saw it, not because they were hoping it was going to be target. The contact would suggest, the helmet to helmet would suggest it is going to be targeting. And then the call was not upheld, of course, or it was decided that it was not targeting. I don't know. Like you've heard me say before, Corey, it seems like, here's another example, blindside block. That's now a foul in college football, you realize, a blindside block. Well, what it amounts to is if you really destroy a guy with a blindside block, that's a foul. If you just kind of run into him and you're not really, it's not a punishing block, then maybe we'll let that one go. You know, so we're getting into a lot of muddy water here in terms of what's a foul, what's not a foul. That was clearly helmet to helmet, and yet it wasn't called a foul. So I don't know what to tell you.
Absolutely. And Fast Outdoor Food says, anyone notice that Goodson isn't a very good blocker on the pass rush? I like Tyler Goodson, but he's not a great blocker on pass rush. And I'll say this, I don't think he goes to the NFL. I think he either returns or transfers, Don. I would have a hard time seeing him decide to declare at this point. Would you agree with that?
I think so. If he declares, he might get drafted, I guess, but that doesn't mean you're making a team. Let's face it, until you make a team, you haven't made a lot of money. Signing bonuses, unless you're a high draft pick, you're not talking about that much money. It's not going to last you the rest of your life, that's for sure. One thing I would say about Tyler, I have a lot of respect for Tyler because he's tough. Yep. And pound for pound, he's a good back, no doubt about that, but he is a little bit undersized. But in terms of pass protection, the only thing I would suggest to him from watching him, because they do have a tendency, once they hit him, if they have a head of steam, they're not going to juke him. They're just going to shove him back into the quarterback. That's what happened on last night. So one of the coaching points I'd give to Tyler is, Tyler, if you've got a blocking responsibility and he's headed your way, you better go meet him. You better go meet him on or near the line of scrimmage, because if you wait for him, his momentum is even greater than what it would otherwise be, because he's had a chance to get ahead of steam and the contact that he's making with you, you're dangerously close to the quarterback already. So you got to go meet him on or near the line of scrimmage. Don't wait for him to come to you. I think the time I'm thinking of last night is Tyler was waiting for him a little bit, and then he got bull rushed back into our quarterback. That's a problem. It's always a problem. If you're a 200-pound back and you're trying to block a guy that weighs 240, that's a problem. You better go meet him.
Darrell MVP, you certainly can call in. He's a Kentucky fan, wants to give us some insight on Kentucky. Absolutely. Give us a call, 515-758-7773. Let's get to our next caller. Thank you for calling Iowa at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Can you hear us, caller?
Oh, hey, Corey. Hey, Don. It's the real MVP. How you doing this morning?
That was good.
I decided to call
Good timing. Yeah, thanks for calling.
Yeah, I'm probably one of the only Kentucky fans part of Mark's group, so I decided to come by. I mean, I've casually watched you. You guys do great content, great insight.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that.
I know Don said earlier in the stream he hadn't know much about Kentucky football. We did play Georgia. We got crushed. We couldn't move the ball to save our life. We lost 30-13 against them. Our best wins are against Florida, LSU, and Louisville. We haven't beaten a team above 500 all year. And we have as a Kentucky fan, we have a really, really bad habit of turning over the ball. Like our turnover margin is like -14, -15 throughout the whole year, and only Arizona's worse than us. So when I saw we got paired up with Iowa
defense.
I was going to say the Iowa defense has been known to force a lot of turnovers too.
Yeah, when I saw that, that's going to be a bad matchup for us.
You could be right.
Yeah.
I will say this real quickly. Don and maybe our caller can provide some insight on Levis. But, of course, Will Levis is a guy that Iowa has matched up against before when he was at Penn State. Obviously, Iowa is familiar with Mark Stoops. I mean, I know Kirk wasn't around. Kirk would have been on the staff when Mark was a player, but Kirk was gone by the time he was a GA at Iowa, correct? Because I think Mark was here from 90 to 91.
Yes, and Kirk's last year with us was 89, as I recall.
Yeah, but Will Levis is a guy that Iowa is familiar with, caller, and I think that's an opportunity at least to have a bit of get a feel for how he plays. Certainly, he's a mobile guy. Is he run the ball as much as he did when he was at Penn State?
Yes. Yeah, probably even more, to be honest now. Like the later half of the year, there's been some seconds ever since the bye game. He's been running it probably 5 to 10 times a game. And if our last game against Louisville, he had 4 rushing touchdowns.
Well, there you go. I think it's I didn't know the stat about turnovers. I didn't know Kentucky was one of the worst teams as far as turning the ball over in the country. And you said margin, correct, caller? So it's not just the offense turning the ball over; it's the defense not creating turnovers.
Yeah, we've only had something like 5 interceptions for our defense all year.
Don, any thoughts on?
It's been horrible.
on how Kentucky could certainly or could possibly turn that thing around against. I mean, this is almost obviously it works out as far as matchups, SEC, Big Ten, and obviously the Citrus Bowl. But boy, if you're the Citrus Bowl, you're looking at this thinking, boy, this is a beautiful matchup because it could be a very entertaining game if you got a team who's consistently turning the ball over against an Iowa team that their calling card has been turnovers.
Yeah, I would say something's got to give, right?
Absolutely.
One side's going to prevail.
Yeah.
Let me say this, too, about your loss to Georgia. We're certainly not going to beat you up over a loss to a team as good as Georgia. We just had a rough game last night, too, of course. And Georgia's made a lot of people look bad this year, and I guess Kentucky's just one of many teams that are in that category.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. Georgia, Michigan, they're whole different animals. So, I mean, there's no shame in Iowa what they've done this season. They've hit 10 wins. They made it to the Big Ten championship game. That is an incredible season. So
I agree with you that there's a lot to be happy about. I totally agree with you. I don't want to downplay the 10-3. It's amazing that this team is 10-3 with the offense that it puts on the field, and that just is so much credit to LeVar Woods and the certainly Phil Parker, the guys on defense. I mean, Kelvin Bell, and I mean just everybody who's made that possible. You're right. 10-3 is it should be a good game. I think it's going to be entertaining. Maybe a little bit under the radar as far as bowl matchups. People aren't going to be flocking to watch Kentucky versus Iowa, but I think it'll be interesting. Somebody said to me earlier today. Somebody said to me earlier today, "Oh, does that mean we get to see Iowa versus C.J. Frederick?" And I said, "I think you're thinking of the wrong sport." So,
yeah.
Anyway,
this is going to be a very physical game. I expect a lot of war in the trenches type offense because Kentucky, Iowa, both very physical at the lines of scrimmage.
I could see it being very much like Iowa, Mississippi State was in the Outback Bowl a few years ago. I could foresee a game like that.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm expecting. I don't expect either team to get into the 30s at all. I'm expecting like a 24-21 game. The only thing that would shock me in this game is if either team blows the other team out.
I have a question. Would you say that your strength is your defense or your offense?
I would go with offense. We've had some missed assignments on defense for later parts of the year. It showed up especially against the Tennessee game, where we left Tennessee when we played them. They had the ball for the first quarter for 30 seconds total throughout the first quarter, and they were up 14-7 at the end of that quarter. So
yeah, that's what time of possession sometimes misleading, isn't it?
It was misleading last night, Don, for the first.
Yeah, one way to win on time of possession is let them have a chunk play or a few chunk plays.
Couple.
Yeah, and our best player total in terms of just pure talent, and you guys should be familiar with him, is Wandell Robinson. Number one, he used to play for Nebraska.
I do remember him. A very explosive player.
He's at Kentucky?
Yes.
Wow. That's cool. That's cool. There's some connections here. There are some connections.
Yeah, he owns the all-time receptions at Kentucky for a wide receiver in a single season.
Wow. Well, there you go. And, of course, Iowa, let's not forget, Iowa had a basketball player, Ahmad Wagner, transfer to Kentucky and finish up his career as a wide receiver for the Wildcats a couple years ago. So there are some lines that run deep between these two teams, and it starts, obviously, with your head coach.
Oh, yeah. Mark Stoops. And I'm so glad, as a Kentucky fan, we extended him because if we didn't have Mark Stoops as our head coach, I'm afraid Kentucky would go back to the irrelevancy that we once were for like 20-some years. Because, I mean, he's built us up to this mid-tier powerhouse team. I'm very happy with what he's done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've known Mark Stoops ever since he was a high school senior, or maybe actually an underclassman, come to think of it, because Bobby and Mike, of course, were at Iowa even when he was a younger person in high school. And you guys are blessed with a really outstanding coach. I have no doubt that all those parents out there that are thinking about their sons going to Kentucky, that's a good option for them because Mark Stoops will treat those young men the way they deserve to be treated. He's first class in every way, and he knows a lot about football too.
Anything else?
I totally agree with that.
Anything else to add, Durrell MVP? We appreciate you calling in.
No, I don't. No problem, Corey. I'm just going to enjoy listening to the rest of the show. You guys do a great job.
All right, we'll talk to you again this month, okay?
Okay, will do.
All right, take care. I do like this comment from Eric. He says, and I saw this tweet because I do like John Miller. He says, what is Iowa's offensive identity? John Miller touched on this on Twitter, saying, over the Ferentz era, they really haven't had one. Thoughts? What's the offensive identity, Don? How would you – I think we kind of summed that up earlier, but how would you answer that?
Ball control, a really good ability to not beat yourself, very few penalties, protect the ball, play the field position game, put the defense in an awkward position as infrequently as possible. I think we do those things year in and year out. That's what provides us with a chance to beat a lot of people that we're not supposed to beat.
Appreciate this kind comment from Doug. Michigan fan here. I've gotten addicted to your show over the last week. I enjoy hearing from a coach's perspective. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Doug. It's always nice to hear from fans who are respectful and kind. So thank you, Doug, for that comment. Let's get to our next caller here. Thank you for calling Iowa at the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Minnesota Dave.
Howdy. How are you, Minnesota Dave?
I'm doing good.
Where's Minnesota going bowling? By the way, congratulations. I saw the Gophers knocked off Mississippi State today in basketball. But where are the Gophers going bowling this year?
They are going to some bowl game in Arizona. I think that's the one reason why I'm calling. I was going to ask Don, did you ever feel that Iowa got snubbed in bowl games over other teams that you thought you beat or played better against?
Absolutely.
Had a better. All right. Because I felt that we got a little snub and we didn't get Music City over Purdue, and we didn't get Vegas over Wisconsin.
You got the guaranteed rate bowl, and I'm saying rate like a tax rate, guaranteed rate tax rate bowl. And you play West Virginia. You play West Virginia at 9:15 p.m. Central Time on December 28th. That's a late game, man.
And that's in Arizona, you said?
Yeah.
That might be past my bedtime. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to see that one. I'll have to TiVo it.
You're gonna watch it, Don. You're gonna watch it.
Of course I will. I've known PJ ever since he played college ball, so I'll watch and I'll cheer for PJ.
Well, I'll be cheering for you guys too. And the other thing I want to ask you is, you guys were talking about older games, talking about the years that Iowa went to Rose Bowl. Do you guys remember that Iowa lost to Minnesota after the two Rose Bowl, during their Rose Bowl appearances? And I think it was 81. They lost 12-10. And I think it was 1990 that they lost 31-24. And I was at that's the first Minnesota sporting event that I was at, was the Iowa Minnesota game, when we beat you guys 31-24, and you guys ended up going to the Rose Bowl, and we got snubbed by not getting any bowl that year.
Yeah, back in those days, there weren't nearly as many bowl games, so you might actually have a decent record and have no place to go. You're right.
Yeah. So, Don, I have a question about the 86 game for you. Do you remember the Stanton forward pass?
You're talking about the fall of 86?
Yeah, 86. The phantom forward pass where our linebacker hits your quarterback and he fumbles the ball, but the ref said it was a forward pass. And Minnesota did scoop that ball in the end zone.
And I guess you're going to tell me it really was a lateral? The ball came out backward? I mean, a fumble, rather?
Yeah, it was
Corey, I'm sorry, I lost him.
Can you still hear us, Dave?
I hear you now. Dave, I'm sorry, I lost you, Dave. Tell me again, did they ruled it a forward pass, but the replay shows it should have been a fumble?
A forward pass, and Minnesota should have had the fumble recovered in the end zone. If it was replayed, it would have been a fumble and recovered in the end zone.
You know, that's the good thing about replay, of course. A lot of these calls that they used to miss through the years, now with the replay, they don't miss so many anymore. So it's an improvement to the game. It slows the game down, but I am glad that we have instant replay because I think in almost all cases we get it right.
Yeah. But just gonna keep it simple. Hope you guys beat an SEC school, which is my favorite thing to watch when the Big Ten beats up on the SEC, because I get sick and tired of hearing about how great the SEC is. And go Hawks! Topped up a little bit there.
Hey, I have a
I thought I heard it. Go Hawks in there somewhere.
I think that was a loogie. Thanks for the call tonight, Dave.
Thank you, Dave, for taking out the Badgers. We appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely did. Before we get to our next caller, I want to repeat a tweet, and I wouldn't normally do this, but so John Miller was brought up earlier, longtime Iowa guy, and of course used to be WHO here in Iowa. He tweeted out earlier today, this morning actually, he says, "These are the thoughts I've said or written several times over the past 23 years. Iowa lacks an offensive identity. What is it that we can confidently and consistently say the offense does well, other than deploying offensive linemen and tight ends into NFL caliber talent?" Now, I don't want to read too much into this, but John Miller tweeted that out again about 11 a.m. this morning. Nikki Britt, who is Justin Britt's mother, responds to the tweet and says, "Change is definitely coming." What does that mean, Don?
She must be sitting in on those staff meetings. I didn't realize she was in the locker room after the game.
So Mrs. Britt, we're calling her Ms. Britt. So Nikki says a little bit later, and I'm sure that created a bit of a firestorm because everybody wants to read into everything. She then kind of recanted. She says, "First, you guys are stuck with the Brits, but with people that declare future transfers and new players, I was being Captain Obvious." I don't know. Found that sort of an interesting response.
So she's alerting us that somebody's going to be transferring.
Well, or she's
several somebody's.
Yeah, she's acknowledging, I guess, that's just the era we live in, maybe. I just think it's sort of a cryptic tweet there. But again, I don't know. I don't know how do you really think a second string? I mean, Justin Britt has been a good rotational player at guard, I think, for Iowa for the most part, although I would have hoped – I hoped at this point he would be – because I think he's one of the more athletic guys on Iowa's line. I don't know. Maybe that's just fallacy. I don't know. But to me, it's disappointing he hasn't taken one of those full-time guard positions, especially you have Connor Colby coming in from Cedar Rapids as a true freshman and taking over. That disappoints me a little bit because I would expect Cody Ince, Justin Britt, Kyler Schott to really nail down those other two spots. I don't know. I would have a hard time believing that Justin Britt's mom would know something maybe that would be going on behind closed doors as it relates to changes. But I could be wrong. I'm not behind closed doors.
Yeah, I wouldn't know either. I'll say this about the transfer portal. I would just warn players that are thinking about transferring, be sure if you're thinking about it, it's for all the wrong reasons. If it's simply that you aren't getting as much playing time as you want, I would suggest to you as a guy that coached for 37 years, coaches have a lot on the line in terms of being able to keep their job. And part of keeping their job, of course, is playing the best players the most. So I would caution you just to assume that you're getting a bad deal. The odds are he simply does not have an appreciation for you that he has of some player that you're competing against. If somebody else is playing more than you are, then the coach, for whatever reason, decides that guy can produce better than you. So you can have one of two attitudes. You can have the attitude that you're a victim of circumstance, that you're getting a raw deal. That's one option. Have an attitude that you're a victim. Or you can have an attitude, I'll show him. And that's the right attitude to have. You know, rather than just automatically taking off because you feel like you're not getting a fair shake, just give yourself an honest assessment. You know, is there more I can do to show the coach that I'm the better player? Because the bottom line, he simply hadn't been convinced yet by you, and you might even check with some of your teammates, and they might even confirm what I'm saying. Maybe you can be more committed to what you're doing. You can gain more from your workouts. You can do a better job of studying film. You can have better conditioning. You can be a more reliable teammate in terms of never forgetting an assignment on the game field, those kind of things. So, and if you have great teammates, if you've got a lot of friends on the team, there's no guarantee that the next place you'll develop the same kind of friendships that you have where you are. So I would just recommend to all young men that they think twice about transferring. It shouldn't be an automatic thing. It should be something you put a lot of thought into, and certainly something you've talked a lot with your coaches and your parents.
Don, we do have several callers on hold, but Monty wants to know, he says Hayden once punted on 3rd and long. Ball was snapped between QB's legs and punter snuck into running back position. Nobody back to receive punt. Correct me if I'm wrong, Don.
Yeah, I believe we might have done that. In 21 years with Coach Fry, I've pretty much seen it all one time or another. So, yeah, I think we probably did that sometime.
All right, let's get to our next caller. Thank you for patiently waiting and calling Iowa, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Jake.
Hey, Jake.
How you doing tonight? I just had a couple questions about the game last night.
Sure.
I am a Michigan fan, but I've been listening to your show for like this whole season. I've really enjoyed your content. I thought you guys had Michigan right where they wanted them going into halftime last night, and I was a little nervous. I thought the game was going to be close all night, and I was confused why you guys stopped taking deep shots. I thought they were working. You got a couple of pass interferences, and I just wanted to see your thoughts on that.
What do you think, Don?
Jake, I haven't had a chance. Of course, I was at the game, but I haven't had a chance to get all the way through the TV tape. I'm in the middle of the third quarter right now. You were pressed up on us a lot with your corners, and we tried any number of times to hit something over the top. In general, they were simply ruled incomplete. We did get the one DPI early that helped us with our first drive down the field. I'll tell you what impressed me with the Michigan team last night. Like you say, Jake, 14-3, the game's still in doubt. Without question, the game's still in doubt. And we needed to take the ball to start that second half and just put up some kind of points. Even 3 points would matter because 14-6, of course, we're back to a one-score game again. The fact that we couldn't do that, and then you guys answered with the touchdown drive to make 21-3. To me, that first 6-7 minutes of the third quarter was really, really important because you guys took advantage of it and we didn't. I was hoping we were going to get back in the game. I was thinking if we got any kind of tricks up our sleeve, this is a great time to use them. Let's go ahead and throw the kitchen sink at them right now, a lot like you guys did in the first quarter. Let's pull out all the stops here because we need to generate some kind of score. Even a field goal matters because it'll reduce it to a one-score game. The fact that we came away dry and you guys drove down the field, I thought that was for sure, back-to-back key possessions in the game. Our failure to move the ball, I think we made a first down or two, but then you guys had a nice long drive. That's the drive that included the seam pass to the tight end that set up the touchdown. That was an impressive drive. I think you guys did the same thing to Ohio State, as I recall, the week before. You scored on that first possession of the third quarter, and that's a great way to start your second half.
Yeah, that's all I really had. I am from Cincinnati, Ohio, so I have a lot of Kentucky fans down here. So I'm going to be rooting for you guys big time in that bowl game.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate
go
that.
Hawks.
Yeah.
Hope the Big Ten does it well in the bowl season.
Yes, and I appreciate you being respectful and kind and being a good winner. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good one, guys.
You as well, Jake. Thank you.
And let me say this too, Jake. Jake is in the majority among Michigan fans. There's no doubt about it. There's always a vocal minority in any fan base, and I hate to say, Corey, that you've run across a few of the minority from Michigan. That's, I guess, part of the problem. Just a few. But there are a lot of great fans at Michigan too. I know that. No doubt about it.
And there have been, I just want to say, I want to apologize to anybody who was on yesterday. I should have cut the first call, the call that kind of went AWOL or whatever the term is. I should have cut that off early, and I apologize to anybody that was subjected to that. Again, I think we have a plan going forward. It all is all based on respect. I keep saying that, and you're probably already tired of hearing me say that. But Don, nothing you or I say is ever personal. And I know you are a lot. You obviously have a relationship with Kirk, and you're good friends with Kirk. I'm not close to Kirk. I call it like I see it. And when I predicted that I thought Michigan would win, I'm not going to apologize for that that Iowa would win. That's how I felt at the time. And I was wrong. I have no problem admitting I was wrong. But again, nothing you or I ever say is personal. We're just trying to analyze it as we see it, I think, Don. And I've said for a long time, I'm a talking head. You're the analyst here. So I may give some opinions, but that's why we have you on. There's no show without Coach Don Patterson.
Well, and the one thing I'm sure of, that opening drive when we had the halfback pass, if we would have connected on it, I know it might sound crazy, but we might have had an entirely different outcome. That's just the nature of football. Momentum is a strange animal. And if you gain momentum, sometimes it can take you 1,000,000 miles. It can take you a long way. And to Michigan's credit, they grabbed the momentum early and they never lost it. And we had an opportunity early and we simply failed to capitalize on it. So hats off to Michigan for being able to play such a great game when it mattered the most.
Absolutely. Let's get to our next caller. Thank you for calling Iowa at the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Ty.
Hey, Ty. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. I just want to say, Corey, I love what you guys are doing. I just said I started listening to the show this week because I was trying to get as much content for the game last night as possible. I love what you guys are doing, and I'm going to continue to listen.
Thank you.
Wanted to get both of your guys' opinions on this, and maybe you'll disagree. Why is it when Iowa, and even when we're winning, we do this? Why is it that instead of trying to win the game, we're trying not to lose it?
That's a great question.
Would you guys agree on that?
Yes. Don, do you have anything
Coach,
to add to that?
you can go ahead and dive in on that.
Yeah, we've talked about it being good strategy, of course. If you've got a lead and now you're into the fourth quarter, that's a great opportunity for you to shorten the game by running the ball a lot more. But I predicate it by saying, if you're going to do that, you still need to grind out first downs. It's not enough to run 3 running plays and punt every time. That's not going to work because, as you say, at that point, you've fallen in that trap of trying not to lose. You can't play. Say it this way: you can't cross the street. You got to take some chances to get across the street. There's always cars coming, so you're on alert for them and you stay out of their way as best you possibly can. You're not going to run out in front of a speeding car, but it's hard to steal second with your foot on first too. I've used that analogy a lot. So you're right. You've worked hard to gain a lead. You don't want to lose all the momentum just because you go into a shell. You still got to, and you take smart plays. There are all kinds of examples of smart plays to protect a lead. And you don't have to be so vanilla with your offense that you're 1-2-3 punt. That's not going to get you very far. Now you're putting undue stress on a defense. It'd be nice if you could, let's face it, if you're protecting a lead, play action should be really good because they fully expect that you're
absolutely
trying to run the ball. So your play action should be better than ever when you're protecting a lead. So don't forget play action.
Yeah, I think we can all probably agree on this. Like, rarely does Iowa ever just we get up, we're aggressive, we step on your throat. The only time I can think of that happening was when we played Ohio State in 2017. We manhandled them, we destroyed them, and everybody in that stadium probably thought we're up by a score, we're gonna go conservative mode, run dive up the middle for maybe back to the line of scrimmage. No, we attacked them that whole game. And maybe that was, Brian Ferentz' luckiest day that day. Who knows? But it just, I just don't know how we justify this season. And our defense typically, as you guys know, it's always ahead of the offense. Our defense is typically always better than our offense. But I like this morning, you guys know, there's 130 something Division I football teams, and our offense in total yards ranks 123rd.
Pretty bad. And there is no. You said you don't know how to You don't know how to justify it. Let me just, and I know you know this. I'm not just stating the obvious, but I'll just be frank. There is no justifying it. You cannot be this bad on offense and expect to compete for Big Ten or any Power 5. I don't care what conference you're in. Iowa's not winning any conference in the Power 5. I don't even think you win the AAC because I don't think Iowa could hang with a team like Cincinnati with this type of offense. They just can't.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you a great example of
100%.
remaining aggressive. It's one of my favorite calls of all time. You might remember the game we were playing Illinois. This is the greatest Illinois defense ever. Matter of fact, if they beat Iowa that day, they're certainly on the way to Pasadena. We go over there and we score touchdowns the first 4 times we have the ball. And Illinois had a good offense too. I think it's something like 28-7 maybe after those 4 possessions. And now we're on our 5th possession and we're driving again into Illinois territory. And now we stall out. They finally stop us. And now we send our field goal unit on the field and promptly run a fake field goal. Now that is a great call because I think at the time it was 28-7 or maybe 28-14 at the most. We had a couple of touchdown lead, but Coach Fry knew we better keep the pedal to the metal. 3 points is not enough. Let's go get 7. And a fake field goal for another touchdown. Jim Hartley threw it. Incidentally, I saw Jim Hartley at the pep rally yesterday afternoon in Indianapolis. And what a wonderful young man. He's not so young anymore. Now I asked him, I said, you'd probably be the mayor of Madison, except it doesn't pay enough. So you're going to keep your job as a banker. But Jim Hartley was a wonderful young man and a really good quarterback. Actually, the number 12 for Michigan reminds me of Jim Hartley. That's Jim's old number. And McNamara's even built kind of like Jim. I think Hartley might be a better runner than the Michigan quarterback. But who am I to say the Michigan quarterback looked pretty good on 3rd and 12 when he ran the Q draw, didn't he? He probably ran for 15.
That was a great play call. That whatever that was, that 3rd long, and they did a McNamara draw up the middle. That was a great play call. And another question for you guys. So if in our bowl game against Kentucky, if the same thing happens, if whoever starts, Petrus or Padilla, and the other one gets pulled, do you see both of them returning next fall?
If I had to put money on it, and I would never do this, obviously, but if I had to guess, I would say yes. That's just a hunch because Deuce left.
I get the impression, too, that Spencer and Alex are really, really close friends. I think they might be roommates even. I'm sure that I'd be shocked if they're not roommates on the road when they travel as players. Sure. Typically, we would have the 1st and 2nd team quarterbacks as roommates on the road because those guys, of course, have a lot to discuss even the night before the game.
And Coach, you could probably relate to this because I believe you said you were at the game last night, as was I. When the Hawkeye fans, they saw Padilla going in, like the stadium erupted, So like how much does that affect Spencer's confidence, with this team?
Well, I mean, I think Spencer knows these guys aren't fools. They're able to be on social media. I don't think Spencer's real active on social media, not that I'm aware of, but if you're a quarterback at Iowa, there's always going to be criticism. And Spencer's had about as much criticism as any quarterback I can remember in my lifetime. So I don't know that hearing boos or hearing cheers for your second string is really going to affect him mentally. I think if he was going to get down on himself, it would have already happened. I mean, he's not playing well, so I don't really know what getting down on himself really would do to his performance. I still think Kirk really likes him because he doesn't. To me, if somebody had asked me why does Kirk seem to favor Spencer Petrus, I think the answer is obvious. Am I right, Don? Spencer has the tendency to play it uber safe, right? He'd rather pitch a ball out 30 yards out of bounds on 4th down and 20 than risk an interception, even though logically that makes no sense. Whereas Alex Padilla, we've seen, is willing to throw the ball into traffic, and I think that scares the living daylights out of Kirk Ferentz.
I lost you there for a little bit, Corey. Can you repeat that last statement? I missed it. I'm sorry.
I just think that since Alex has shown more of a willingness to throw the ball into traffic and take at least some risks. He's still an Iowa quarterback, but Spencer would rather throw the ball 30 yards out of bounds or, take a sack in field goal range than risk an interception and a turnover, whereas Alex is going to throw it into traffic, and I think that scares the living daylights out of Kirk Ferentz, and that's why I think Kirk does prefer Spencer at quarterback when fans want the opposite.
Yeah, I think another thing that comes to mind, I think one reason the coaches certainly appreciate Spencer, I think he has developed as a leader on our team. I certainly get that impression the way the other players talk about him. He's been voted as one of the captains. I think he has improved from a poise standpoint. There were times in the past where I thought he was too nervous. And you've always heard me say, Corey, this applies to the head coach and the quarterback. Never let them see you sweat. You've got to be sure that you're cool, calm, and collected, because if you're not, then your team's in trouble. Both those people need to be cool, calm, and collected. And I think Spencer's made improvement in that area. He used to be a nervous guy in the pocket, and maybe you could argue that he still is to some degree, but I think he's improved in that regard. I think he is a leader within the team. He promotes team unity, those kind of things. He says the right things. He's obviously a smart guy. He can handle the game plan just fine, because he knows how to get us out of the plays that we don't like their alignment, so we're going to change to another play. He can execute all those things the coaches ask him to do. I don't doubt that Alex can do the same, but I think the most obvious advantage maybe that Spencer might have is that he seems to be a good, strong leader within the offense. And you might argue, well, if you're not moving the ball, then how effective can you be as a leader? Obviously, the other players have something to do with the ball not moving as well as it needs to. Also, it's not all on the quarterback. Everybody's got a role.
Anything else, caller?
Oh yeah, my final question. How much do you think this game affected Xavier Nwamka?
I don't think it did. That's just my opinion. I don't know that recruits are swayed by one game, Don. I mean, if I wanted to play for any defense in the Big Ten as a safety, it would probably be Iowa would definitely be in my top three. Do you think that performance last night swayed a kid like Xavier? Can you hear me, Don? Did I lose you?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. I thought the question was to the caller. My guess is Xavier would find himself thinking, you know what, I can help these guys because they need an upgrade at my position, and I'm going to be able to give it to them. So I think the fact that our defense struggled last night at times, I don't think that would be a negative towards Xavier at all. I think he would simply have the mindset, I can help them maybe more than I realized I could even. They need me more than what I first understood. And so in that regard, they actually become more attractive to him maybe than we already do.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for the time, guys. Look forward to listening to more, and go Hawks.
All right, go Hawks. Appreciate the call, and good questions. Great questions coming out from our callers this evening, and we do have another caller here on the line, and I do want to mention real quickly, Nicholas, thank you for this kind comment. Another Michigan fan. He says he's gotten hooked on the show over the past week. Thinks we're very insightful. Thank you for that. Don is the insightful one, but I'll take a little bit of I'll take that as a compliment to myself as well. He says I was a little confused about your confident outlook before the game. Like I've said throughout the last 24 hours, I'm going to call it like I see it. If I have a hunch or if I have a certain feeling, and I don't normally have a certain feeling, I usually try to weigh the game pretty evenly based off of previous performances, etc. But I did have a feeling about this game. Obviously, my feeling was way off. But if I have a feeling or I have a hunch, I'm going to say it. That's what I'm going to do, Don. I'm going to call it like I see it, like I feel it, and I was wrong. I have no problem admitting that. So, but we appreciate the support from Nicholas.
Let me say one thing to Nicholas, Corey, if I can.
Yeah.
Nicholas, I'm assuming you might have been a fan for a long time at Michigan. I just want you to realize that Coach Fry's favorite adversary was Bo Schembechler. He had great respect for Bo. They were great competitors, and they certainly appreciated each other for how well they could do their jobs. And then on a personal basis for me, one of my all-time favorite coaches that I knew as an assistant long before he became a head coach was your head coach, Lloyd Carr. Lloyd Carr is one of the finest men I've ever known. I knew him as an assistant. He was recruiting Wisconsin when I was recruiting Wisconsin as an Iowa assistant. and I gained a real appreciation for him then. And certainly it only grew through the years. And he's one of the finest men I've ever known. And I hope somehow that message gets back to his family even now, because Michigan was lucky to have him. And he did a great job for Michigan, both as an assistant and as a head coach.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and get to our next caller. Thank you for calling Iowa, the voice of college football, and for waiting. Who's on the line?
My name's Michael.
Hey, Michael.
I just wanted to call in and say I like the show.
Thank you.
Do a really good job. You're very honest on everything that you've said. I'm a Michigan fan. I love Michigan. I want to congratulate Iowa on their season. They had a great season. It ain't easy to win a conference in the Big Ten. It's really hard.
Amen, brother.
And I think a lot of the Michigan fans that are saying things that they shouldn't really be saying. It's just that it's been so long since we've been in a position to win a big game like this, and I think it's all frustration just coming out. They finally got somewhere. We finally made it. And I'm the kind of fan that I root for Iowa. I root for Ohio State. I want our conference to do good. I don't want to see LSU winning it every year. It's boring. It's not exciting. You want to see other teams get in there. When Iowa went, I was cheering for Iowa. When Ohio State goes, I cheer for Ohio State. Michigan, this is their first time. I think Michigan's got a pretty good team. I think Michigan plays down to their opponents this year. I think Iowa has a great program. I love Kirk Ferentz. He's a great coach. If Iowa would have had an offense, they'd have went undefeated until this championship game. They'd have been undefeated.
Probably.
Going in there playing Michigan.
Yeah.
And they just didn't have the offensive weapons, or they would have been undefeated. They'd have been number 2 or number 1 in the country. I would probably number 2 because Georgia would have been number 1. But I think Iowa did a great job this year with what they had. I mean, I couldn't believe. I watched the game, and when I watched the game, and I was thinking, because I was listening to you telling me about their defense and about their special teams, and I was thinking, I didn't watch any Iowa games. I was watching all the Michigan games, but when I saw the game, I was like, he's right. They do got a good defense. They do got good special teams. They are playing field position, and that's the way you're supposed to play the game. Get field position. When you were pinning us back down on the 10-yard line, you could tell Michigan was nervous. They were nervous. I was nervous. Everybody was nervous. They were like, uh-oh, you make one mistake with Iowa, they're going to walk the ball right into the end zone. And you could see that they were playing nervous. They couldn't move the ball. They had to punt. It's about field position. The game is about field. Kirk Ferentz is a great coach. It's if you don't have an offense. Look at championships are won with defense, but games are won with offense. And if you can't score, you can't win. It's that simple. So I think if I would have been Kirk Ferentz, I'd have just let it all go out. Michigan was picked to win by 11. I would have just first play of the possession of the game. I'd have threw the bomb. I would have made those safeties back up.
You and me both.
I would have put them back on their heels.
You and me
and then
both.
What I would have did is I would have screened to the right. I would have screened to the left. I'd have rolled out with that young quarterback that he put in the second half in. I'd have started him. I'd have rolled him out to the right, hit my tight end. I would have rolled him out to the left and hit my tight end. I'd have ran him up the middle. I'd have spread Michigan out. I would have said, I'm going to throw everything at you. I'm going to throw everything in the kitchen sink at you. And if you can take it, then you deserve to go. But if you can't take it, we're going. That's what I would have did.
I'm gonna send you Gary Barta's email, and I want you to ask for a job application, caller.
Well, I coached a couple teams, and we went from worst to first. And if you put your best players in the best positions to succeed, and if you have your best player, I'll tell you what Iowa was lacking. They was lacking in quarterback, and they were lacking maybe one good wide receiver. And if you would have had that, you know what I was thinking too? I was thinking, I don't know why Iowa don't play the option. If they would have played the option, it would have spread in Michigan out. It would have created havoc, and then throw the ball. You guys got good tight ends. I was watching your tight ends. I'm like, oh, guys, these guys are good. You know, you spread them out, and you hit your tight end, and it would have worked. Because I mean, Michigan. You guys, that game was close, and I also agree. When you guys were down there, and I was like, kick the field goal, is because if you don't kick the field goal, you can come back. Then it's a 2-score game. If you can get, all you needed was the turnovers, and when Michigan turned that ball over the first time, I was worried. You know, I was like, this is it. You know,
caller, let me just add in this. We brought this up earlier, but if Gavin Williams makes that play early to Monty Pottebaum, I really believe the game could have been totally different. And I know there's going to be Michigan fans that say, you can't say that. You don't have a right to say that, Corey. You don't have the right. And I'm going to say, well, that's my right to express my opinion. But I really do believe the game would have been different. Caller, you're a Michigan fan. Do you believe that the game could have been different had that trick play worked? And it was right there. It was wide open for the taking.
They would have put them back on their heels. They would have started. I told you, Michigan plays down to their competition. I'm not saying anything about Iowa.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is they would have went into their shell. Man, I'm going to open the game up. I got nothing to lose. They're mighty Michigan. If I was Iowa and I would have came out like I said, look, you're mighty Michigan. I'm going to come out. I'm going to start throwing bombs. I'm going to trust in my defense. I'm going to trust in my special teams. If you thought like when Michigan threw the bomb with 5 seconds left, I was fine with that because I'm like, I was saying it before he did it. Throw the bomb. It's just like a punt. Even if they get it, you know, you're going to be down. They're going to be on the 99-yard line. If he runs it back, good for you. You know, I mean, and I would have been telling my team, guess what? You got to tackle them because we're throwing the bomb. You know, that's your job. You go from offense to defense at that point. And, you know, everybody should know their job. I didn't even see any Michigan receivers trying to catch the ball, to tell you the truth. Looked like they were just standing around.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Kelly.
No, I love Iowa football. I love Iowa.
I can tell.
I love Iowa football. I love Kirk Ferentz. He's a great coach. He's an honorable man. He's what the Big Ten is all about.
Yes, he is.
You know, you don't see him trying to go off to know someone else, another college. He's been there for Iowa the whole time. Everybody should thank God they got him. They should thank the Lord in heaven that they have Kirk Ferentz as their coach. Only thing that Iowa's ever the offense. They need a good offensive coordinator to come in. And I know if his son's the coordinator, I understand that part. And you know, maybe he can change, maybe he can adapt. But you have to adapt. It's not like the Big Ten like it used to be. The Big Ten used to be, you know, honorable and all that, and the coaches stayed, and like Harbaugh, he's a Michigan man. When Harbaugh came here, when he was coaching in Stanford, I was like, get Harbaugh. When he came here, he didn't adapt. You know, it was like, okay, you know, you're not doing the things that you should be doing. You gotta let it all out. You got nothing to lose against Ohio State. When we played Ohio State, we got nothing to lose. We had nothing to lose. Let it all hang out. And I'll tell you what, you hit the guy hard. You do it fair, but you hit the guy hard. And this is why you hit him hard. Because the next time he's going to catch that ball, he's going to turn around and look. Where's that guy that hit me really hard? Where is he? Oh, there he is. And then you get your eye off the ball. Once you take your eye off the ball, you end up not catching the ball. So, I mean, I thought they should have threw the bomb a lot more on Michigan. I don't know downfield. Is because you can get anything. You can get a pass interference. You can catch the ball. A lot of different things can happen. And all you got to do is once or twice. Is because once you do that once or twice, that's in their mind. They're thinking about it. He's going to go downfield. You're going to have those safeties backed up 3 or 4 more yards. Then they can't come up on those plays and tackle your running back when he's going to the right-hand side or the left-hand side. They're too far back. By the time they catch him, he's already made the first down. I mean, I could see Iowa's team. They had the talent. They have talent. They have talent on offense. They just didn't utilize it. They didn't utilize their talent. And all they had to do was get Michigan back on their heels, and they'd have went into their shell, and they would have started playing conservative, and it would have been anybody's game at that time. I remember, I've been watching you for a week now, and I've been listening to everything you say. I agreed with everything you were saying. When you were saying that Iowa can win this game, I was thinking, he's right. They can win this game because Michigan is too conservative. I mean, when they came out with that pass, with that with the running back, that was the kind of things he should have been doing all year round. I'll tell you what. When I saw Michigan, this is when I knew they were playing for real. Is when they played Maryland, then they played Ohio State, and then when they went go into the Iowa game, I was the same. I was scared because I was thinking they're too high. They're too high is because they've been 10 years. They wanted to beat Ohio State too bad. I was worried they were going to go back into their shell and play down. Is because I know you play down to Iowa, guess what's going to happen? They're going to beat you. They're going to come out. I loved your defense. I thought they were great. I thought Michigan didn't run all over them. They had a couple big plays, and that's going to happen. And that's when you just gather your team. One big play, that's nothing. We can come back. When you guys missed that field goal, that was a big play. When you guys didn't kick that field goal, that was a big play. I would have did all that. I would have 9 points. 9 points. That game should have been 14-9. That game should have been 14-9 going into half. And Michigan would have been on the back of the heels. Iowa got the ball. Iowa should have came out. First play of the game, I'd have threw the bomb. Come on, baby. We're playing football now. I'm here to play. Are you guys here to play? Because if you're not here to play, guess what? Iowa's going to win the game. Iowa was ranked number 2 in the country. They weren't ranked number 2 for no reason. They were ranked number 2s because they got a great coach. They have great intensity. They have a great defense. They have great special teams. They got a good offense. You guys are not utilizing your offense. You have to go to your strengths. You have to use your strength.
Let me ask you a question.
Am I talking too much?
Yeah, let me ask you a question because I do have to get to another caller here, and I don't want to cut you off. But let me ask you one final question before we let you go, caller. Were you offended by the fact that I picked Iowa to beat Michigan?
No, because I was thinking the same thing. If they don't come out and play up to their ability, I was going to kick their ass. They're going to show them. They're going to show them, guess what? This is Iowa football. I probably shouldn't have swore. But
it's okay. We'll
they're going to say, this is Iowa football.
Hey, we appreciate the call and promise to call in again sometime. We appreciate your passion.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, man. All right. That was one passionate Michigan fan, and I really do believe that he thinks that Iowa could have won that game, Don.
I thought that was Coach Rockney from Notre Dame there for a few minutes. But I loved it because he is passionate about Michigan football.
Absolutely. We appreciate that. And I appreciate the kind comment from Gary. Thank you, Destiny Pirate from Okoboji. He says, always trying to err on the side of being too much of a gentleman. That's what I was trying to do last night with our caller that got rather hostile. I don't like dealing with that. But again, I don't like hanging up on people. I try to be respectful to, and it does take, Don, you and I have talked about it. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage for somebody to call into a call-in show. I don't want to be disrespectful, but again, at some point it's hard to, you've got to draw the line somewhere. So, and I do appreciate this from Doug. He says that we've made several Michigan fans of our show, which is incredible to me because if I just went by some of the response that I got midweek, Don, I would have said the exact opposite.
It is gratifying to hear that they really, really enjoy the show, and sounds like they're committed to listening to it as long as we'll have it.
You know, Don, we keep saying how divided this world we live in is. It's either black or white. I think this is the epitome of that. People have either come here and hated what I've said and some of the things you've said, certainly, or they're enjoying it. So, again, we appreciate that. And I'm sorry that people didn't like our picks. I'm sorry that people didn't like Don's take on Jim Harbaugh scoring late in the game yesterday, but we both call it like we see it. We do appreciate, though, people acknowledging that. And I want to extend a big thank you. Our caller here has been waiting on hold for 23 minutes. You are a trooper, and you were on for that entire last call. So it's now your job to meet the energy of that last caller, and to somehow bring something more, I don't know, flavorful than what that last caller had.
I'll do my best. Since it's legal to block downfield on a pass play, if that pass is behind the line of scrimmage, why does not Iowa do more wide receiver screens? Are they afraid they're not able to get those downfield blocks?
Certain weeks we have run quite a few of them. Other weeks, not at all. I suspect it has something to do with that we're not sure, we're not confident that we can maintain those blocks that we need that are just across the line of scrimmage. That's probably what it is.
Okay. West Coast teams seem to use wide receiver screens a lot, and not so much in the Big Ten here. Am I misinformed on that, or does that seem to be a pattern?
I haven't seen enough Pac-12 games to comment or compare, but I suspect that that's true. Maybe you have even more spread offense in the Pac-12 than you do in the Big Ten.
And let me just say this, caller, and I'm not just talking about wide receiver screens. Something else I was very disappointed with our offensive game plan. Don, you said it on my podcast over From the Hawkeye of the Storm midweek that you saw Michigan on tape be susceptible to screenplays. And Fox, the commentators, commented on that. I only remember seeing one screenplay in the game.
And it was a good play.
So why in the world are we running one screen against that defense that's shown very little fragility? And yet here's one thing that you feel like you can attack, and we don't attack it. Explain that to me, Don.
Well, I don't have a really good explanation other than maybe we were spooked out of calling screen passes because traditional screens, I'm talking about traditional screens, are best against zone coverage versus man. Obviously, if it's man coverage and the linebacker's manned up on the running back, he's going to go try to find the back on our side of the ball, behind the line of scrimmage. Maybe in that regard, of course, we can't get him blocked well enough. But there are other kind of screens. They're what we call slip screens, where sometimes they don't worry about covering a back because they make an assumption that he's going to have to block someone when they bring extra rushers. If they're going to rush 5, oftentimes you can predict, and the line typically can account for 5, but maybe they're not accounting for the 5th rusher. Maybe it's somebody else that's coming, at which point a back would have to block him. So sometimes they make the mistake of thinking that you can't get him out on a pass route because he's going to have to be involved with pass protection. That's where the slip screen comes into play. And that's simply a case of a back appearing to block someone, except he knows and the quarterback knows, no, I'm not. I'm going to fake a block on him. He's going to beat me almost immediately. I'm going to turn and look for the ball immediately too. And now you've got a really big play, especially if you can hit the guy on the run. And that's what we used to do. We used to call them slip convoys. So imagine a back having to block an edge rusher, except he's not going to block him. He's simply going to look like he's blocking him. And then he's going to immediately look to the flat over his outside shoulder for a ball that's thrown on the dead run. And if there's somebody else manned up on the back, we're cracking on him anyway with a wide receiver. And of course, when that receiver runs that crack angle inside, for all the corner knows, he's going in there to catch a pass like a slant. So he's got to go with him. And that's how sometimes you can effectively block 2 guys with one. You can run your guy inside knowing that you're going to be blocking somebody that's manned up in the box, typically a linebacker. You don't have to kill the guy. You just got to get in his way, So that's good football when you run what we call slip screens. Those are good plays. You got to know what to do it against certain looks, and other looks it's not so good. But the point is you can run all kinds of screen passes. And the traditional screen, though, is better against zone coverage. But that's okay because you see a lot of zone coverage, of course, in college football.
Don, we do have a couple callers here, and I know we've already hit 2 hours on our show, but I do want to bring up this question, and I lost it here. Let me find it. It's from Paul. He says, does Coach have access to the Iowa game tape? I think I know the answer to this question. You use the national broadcast. You don't use Iowa's game tape. Am I correct?
That's right. I do teach a senior college class in the fall, and I do look at coaches' tape for that because I actually use the coach's video to teach the class. But that's just, during the senior college classes that are scheduled. In a normal weekly situation, I'm simply looking at the same TV tape that you are.
And then Charles says, random thought, what if Notre Dame joined the Big Ten West? So this is a good point, Charles. Notre Dame gets left out of the playoff today, much to my joy, because they need this going 11-1, in my opinion, without a Big Ten or without a conference, Power 5 conference championship, is not better than going 11-2 with a conference championship. It's just not. Now, I did not like the fact that Baylor was ranked below Notre Dame. To me, that's not fair to Baylor. That's just not fair to Baylor. But neither of those teams made the playoff. Don, how would they fare in the West? I think they would. It would turn into a 3-team race. But I have to admit, I'll just be honest, I think it would turn more often than not into a Wisconsin-Notre Dame race as opposed to Wisconsin-Notre Dame-Iowa. I hate to say that, but I do think Notre Dame's ability to recruit in this footprint would hurt Iowa. Yeah,
Notre Dame, of course, enjoys there are a lot of advantages to being an independent if you can pull it off. Army's an independent. Navy is not. Army's got the better team right now than Navy. Air Force is in a conference. But how many schools can pull it off? You either have to have a national appeal, such as the service academies do. But Notre Dame also has a national appeal, of course, because of their ties to the Catholic faith. And that can work in their favor, but obviously they have to go back and re-examine. We need to come up with a little tougher schedule. They have a huge advantage in terms of scheduling, I would feel, because they can, even if they schedule a tough game, they can be sure to schedule a game not very difficult the week before and the week after. And of course, they have a chance if they don't want to play a particular opponent on the road, then they don't have to do it. If you're in a conference, of course, every other year, you're going to have to go on the road and play some difficult opponents, at least on your side of the bracket. If you're in the Big Ten West, you're going to play the other 6 teams, and 3 at home, 3 on the road every year. And then, of course, 3 crossover games in the Big Ten. But Notre Dame has the advantage of getting the schedule as they want it to be. And this year, frankly, it wasn't quite difficult enough. You would think most years 11-1 would get them in. But the fact that they lost to Cincinnati at home, clearly that had everything to do with Cincinnati being accepted, being invited, and that, of course, was a huge negative for the Fighting Irish.
Absolutely. Let's get our next caller here. Thank you for calling Iowa at the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Tom from Michigan.
Hey, Tom. How are you tonight?
Hey, good. I was just asking, what happened to Iowa? I remember with Hayden Fry, they seemed to recruit out of Texas well. I remember a team like 1985 that beat Michigan. There was a game where Iowa was 1 and Michigan was 2, and they had a great quarterback. I remember it was Chuck Long, I think, and great running back Ronnie Herman. Do they just not recruit out of the state of Texas anymore?
That's a Don question. You're a Texas guy, Don. We do have some guy. I mean, Deuce Hogan was a Texas guy.
Yeah,
Matt Hankins was.
Yeah, they have some Texas Hankins. Yeah. To the caller, Coach Fry, of course, he was in when I used to tell people in recruiting. When I was a kid, I watched the Hayden Fry show on TV, and now I'm 35 years old, and he's really, really highly appreciated in Texas. He always was, and he always deserved to be. So that gave us a chance. I will tell you the truth. Our very first year, we got some of the very best players in Texas to come up here and visit. We signed not one of them. They all came up, and they liked Coach Fry. Of course, who wouldn't like Coach Fry? And they loved everything they saw at Iowa, but it was a real leap of faith on their part. They were all highly recruited. And back in those days, of course, Texas would sign more than 30. They might sign 40 just to keep players from having to play against them if they went somewhere else. There was no limitation back then, at least not to the extent that there is now. But the bottom line, that first year we got shut out, and Coach Fry said, we can't recruit Texas until we win here. So after that 81 season, which of course was year 3, I went to Coach Fry and I said, Coach Fry, we got to go back to Texas. And he said, I think you're right. Now that we've won, we can recruit Texas. And I recruited North Texas, and Carl Jackson recruited South Texas. And fundamentally, that was Dallas-Fort Worth in the north and Houston, of course, in the south. And we did get a lot of good players. And it all started with the fact Iowa was such a unique school, because we don't have professional football. So the way I always explain it to a young man from the Metroplex is simply this: we are the Dallas Cowboys of Iowa. If you're a little kid growing up in Iowa, you hope to someday wear the Iowa uniform, just as a young kid growing up in Texas would hope to someday play for the Cowboys. I can say that now since the Cowboys are back and rolling again, because we had some lean years in there. But anyway, we did get some great to get them, and they did come through in a major way. Matter of fact, I ran into one of them at the game last night. Damian Robinson was a free safety for us that played 9 years in the NFL. And he's from a Dallas high school, Dallas Kimball. And I'm proud to say I recruited a lot of great players out of both Houston and Dallas. And they certainly helped us win. And it all started because they wanted to play for John Hayden Fry, because he's a living legend in Texas.
Yeah, my in-laws are big Iowa fans, so we always have playful banter, especially when they play Michigan. And it's always been respectful, but it's been playful. And Hayden Fry was one of my favorite coaches, and I just loved the way he threw out the trick plays a lot. And I guess the next question would be, why doesn't Iowa go like the Michigan route and hire a coordinator from Alabama? Because I think it might help in recruiting, maybe getting some 4- and 5-star athletes to compete with the Ohio States and the Michigan.
Corey, I'll let you.
You want me to answer that one, Don?
Well,
I think
probably best.
Okay. Did you ask caller, why don't we get some coaches? Is that what you said?
Well, like Michigan, they got Gaddis from Alabama. And when you go down south and you get a coordinator from Alabama or one of them southern schools, that might help get some of them athletes from down there up to Iowa. Because I think Kirk Ferentz is a great coach, and he's doing what he's doing with a lot of 3-star athletes. He's not getting the 4 and 5 stars like the Ohio States are.
Frankly,
so maybe if you get the coach from Alabama, or some place down there, it could help maybe get those 4 and 5-star recruits for the skill positions.
Well, first of all, I would say that I think it's hard to get for Iowa. I think it would be hard for Iowa to get any coach from Alabama. You think of the likes of Alabama, typically you're going to have, the Nick Saban tree, of course, has been well documented, but like Iowa did go get Greg Davis. He was the offensive coordinator at Texas and won a national title with the Longhorns. I know he was older, but they did go get him, and I don't know that necessarily worked out, although they did win 12 straight games in 2015 with him, but there were some ugly years under Greg. George Barnett's a MAC guy. Tim Polasek was a North Dakota State guy. Some of these guys have been from smaller schools. I just think it's difficult for Iowa to target the big boys. I just don't think it's just like recruiting. I don't think it's an attractive place for a lot of coaches. I think Don would argue that, because I think Don loves Iowa. That's why, Don, you're back in Iowa City, and you, I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I think you live and breathe Iowa football, despite the fact that you're a Texas guy. You've been at Western Illinois, Buffalo, Connecticut, all these places. But I think Iowa is a great place. I just don't think it's attractive from the outside. So I think that applies to recruiting, and I think it applies to coaching searches. And then also you got to look at the fact that, I'm not going to use the word nepotism. People do use that term. I'm not going to go that far. I think it's a strong word to use. But, Kirk's son is the OC. His son-in-law is the recruiting coordinator. His buddy is Ken O'Keefe, the quarterback's coach. There's just, and that happens. That you're going to have connections on your own staff. Phil Parker is a guy who I saw somebody comment this. Why hasn't Phil Parker wanted a head coaching job? Maybe he just loves Iowa City and loves not taking the heat of a head coach. I don't know why that is, but I think there's a lot that goes into that. I'd say overall it's because Iowa is just not attractive from the outside perspective.
Yeah, but I think a couple of good seasons strung together can change that, because you could, like Tom Osborne, Nebraska, And Oklahoma, for instance, it's not, East Coast or West Coast, but after a while, winning it leads to good recruiting. And like I said, I think Kirk Ferentz does a great job with the talent he has. I mean, you can never count Iowa out against anybody.
You're right. No, I think it's an underrated job. I think every position at Iowa is underrated, especially head coach. I think it's a very underrated job, and I think Kirk realizes that, and that's part of the reason why I think Kirk has stayed as long as he has, and that's why I think Hayden Fry stayed. Don, I know there's always been speculation that Hayden Fry was offered the USC job. I don't know if you can confirm that or not, but I wouldn't be shocked by that. I think Hayden really appreciated Iowa.
Yeah, there was a meeting. He came in one time and he said, normally I don't even tell you about the inquiries I get about different jobs, but he said, this one, maybe we need to talk about it a little bit because they've had more high trophy winners than any other school. They've had more first-team All-Americans than any other school. And maybe for that reason alone, we should consider them. And it was Southern Cal. And even then, I don't remember all the particulars, but even then, we didn't have a strong sentiment to go to Southern Cal. We loved Iowa. But at that point in time, we'd been here for quite a few years. We have children, of course, that have friends and we're very much a part of the community. And nobody was excited about considering to go to Southern Cal. Of course, if you work at Southern Cal, you might have to commute an hour and a half to work every day because, well, nowadays with what they pay assistants, maybe they could live a little closer to campus, I guess. But back in those days, you would have been looking at a long commute. So, but we're just very loyal to our players. A lot of players would ask Coach Fry, especially as he got older, Coach, can you promise me you'll be here for all of my years? And up to a point, he did that. He promised them, and he followed through on it. But as you know, as he got older, it became more difficult because it was obvious you can't coach forever. Coach Fry, I believe, was 69 or maybe 70 when he retired. I don't know if he had his 70th birthday or not. I think it was right before his 70th birthday. Let me see. I can figure it out. He was born in 29, and his last season was 98. So, yeah, he was 69 because he would have turned 70 in February of 99. So he was almost 70 years old when he retired. And even then, of course, it tied into his health, had health issues. And of course, some people thought they wanted to change, and we understand that. I can say this as the only assistant that was there all 20 years. Those last few years, it became more difficult because it was harder to recruit because the players knew there's no way I can be guaranteed that I'll be playing my entire career for Coach Fry. So it made it more difficult to recruit.
All right. Well, thanks for taking my call. And again, I've always thought Iowa was a class program. And like I said, me and my in-laws, we would always banter when it was Michigan Iowa week, but it was respectful. And like I said, Iowa's always been a clean program, and I never took them lightly. So congratulations on another good season, and hope you guys continue to do well.
Thank you, caller. Appreciate it as always. And again, I appreciate all the support. A lot of Michigan people calling in tonight, Don, and that's been nice to see. Again, we're trying to finish up here, so we'll take a couple more questions. But Don, you've been more than generous with your time. I know you're probably tired from the trip to Indy. And I think for some of our listeners, this has been a bit of a therapy session. So I think you rest assured, Don, I think you're doing some fans some good. I don't want to pronounce this. I don't know how to pronounce this username, but he says, will next year's matchup between Iowa and Michigan be a grudge match at Kinnick after Michigan scored late?
I would suspect that our players will remember how that game played out last night. Yes.
And then Kevin says, serious question for Coach. Ever see Kirk Ferentz audible to a pass? I have not. I don't remember the last time, Don.
I'm not sure. I do know that we check to run to one running play over another one at times, certainly. A check to a pass, I guess I can't guarantee you that he's done that. I'm not sure. I know in the old days we used to check to a lot of passes. I do know that.
All right. And then the last thing I want to get to before we put our caller through here on the air, Gary, appreciate this shout out. He says, found this show week 2 or 3. I want to hear Corey's hoops content. Well, it's not just my hoops content. It is myself and Coach Gary Close. So if you haven't already subscribed and you're an Iowa basketball fan, what are you waiting for? Iowa Basketball Postgame with Coach Gary Close from the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. So a different channel than what you're listening to right now. Subscribe to From the Hawkeye of the Storm. We'll be live tomorrow night after Iowa's game against Illinois. So again, please subscribe From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. Of course, it's free to subscribe. It's YouTube. So great content. And again, we host these shows with Coach Close, who is also a terrific mind, as Don will attest to, in the sport of basketball. And then Paula says, is this the last show with Shepard Smith and Burt Reynolds this year? Shepard Smith, Don, I don't know. I don't know who's had more comparisons. I mean, people are pretty comfortable calling you Burt Reynolds. I've had Rob Lowe, Fred Savage, Shepard Smith. Ben Shapiro is another one. So I don't know. I don't know which one it is, Don, but Shepard Smith.
I will say this. Shepard Smith might have the best voice on television.
He does.
So
doesn't he?
Voice alone, you're right there with him, Corey.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Don. Okay, let's get to what I think is going to be our final caller of the night. Thank you for calling Iowa at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hi, I'm Alex.
Hey, Alex.
With Xavier and Blanca making this decision Wednesday, do you think he's going to commit to Iowa?
That's a great question. I've been asked that question, but now with his decision looming, I think so. I think if I had to guess, I would say Xavier Wamp is a Hawkeye. Don, I know you're probably not real in touch with Xavier and recruiting, but care to offer a guess? I mean, his final three are Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Iowa.
You know, I mentioned earlier, sometimes I think recruits think differently than you might think they do. The example I used, okay, if we get beaten convincingly, does that drive him away, or does that convince him that he could make a difference in our program? And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he had the second mindset. Those guys need my help, and I'm born and raised in Iowa. I think he is, at least. I know he's, of course, living in Iowa now, and I'd like to believe he could make a difference in our team. You know, we need all the help we can get, and he certainly would help anybody with him in their lineup. There's not a team in the country that wouldn't be improved with him in the lineup. I think that's safe to say.
Man, that'll be great. That'll make honestly, this is what I'll say about that caller, because I'm glad you brought that up. Iowa fans are down, and for good reason. There's issues on offense. I think this offense, I would venture to say the offense, if it doesn't need to be overhauled, I think there needs to be some serious conversations about philosophy. What could change a lot, I'm not saying it's going to just reverse what happened on Saturday, but if Xavier Wampa were to pick Iowa Wednesday, fans would really be happy. I mean, that would sort of change the moods of a lot of Iowa fans. I think that is safe to say. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I knew it was coming Wednesday. But if I had to put a guess in, I would say Xavier's an Iowa guy. I'd be surprised about Notre Dame. I did hear that the new head coach for Notre Dame was the guy that recruited Xavier at Southeast Polk. So perhaps that makes a difference. I would say one thing, that if I'm Xavier looking at right now, I'd say, look, certainly Iowa didn't make the playoff, but all three of these teams are top 20 programs right now. And Ohio State and Notre Dame were, 5 and 6 in the playoff polls, I believe, today. So they were right on the outside looking in. But I'd also weigh the fact that Notre Dame is independent, and that hurt them, as it should. It hurt them in the race for the playoff. So if I'm Xavier, I'm looking at that saying, I might want to join a school that has a conference championship so I have a chance at playing at the best level out there, because 11-1 at Notre Dame, even in a chaotic year, just ain't going to get it done. So I would guess either Iowa or Ohio State. I would lean Iowa. Now, wait, we're going to get a bunch of fans on here, Don. They're going to rip me for being a homer because I picked Iowa for Xavier, but I think he'll pick Iowa. That'd be my guess.
I hope he picks Iowa.
I hope he does too. We're on the same page on that. And what do you know? Is he announcing this on social media? Is he announcing
on Wednesday? On 247, I think.
Okay, like just on, what do you mean 247? Like do they have a live stream, or do you know?
Maybe, I think so.
Okay, yeah, I'll find that out, because obviously we'll be all over that on Wednesday. But I appreciate you reminding us on that.
Yep. Hopefully we win tomorrow for basketball.
Yeah, join us for the postgame show.
All right, thank you.
So while I'm thinking of it,
Great night.
can you hear me? While I'm thinking of it, you mentioned earlier, or the question came up, is this the last show? I'm assuming that you and I would both like to do.
Uh-oh. Did we lose you, Don? Wow, that hasn't happened in a while. That has not happened in a while. Let's see if we can get Don Patterson back here. If anybody's wondering, by the way, why I've got just a plain black backdrop tonight, let's address this before we add Don back into the mix. We were out of town yesterday for the game, and so the backdrop went with us, and it's a fairly difficult thing to move around. So I'll throw that out there. And I think we do have Don back. Don, we did lose you for a second, but what was your question?
Question, Corey. Someone asked, excuse me, is this the last show you're going to do? I would like to think we're going to do a pre-bowl show, and then maybe at least one after, if not before, maybe before and after. That's up to you. But if you want to do other shows, and if the listeners would like to hear us, then I'm certainly on board.
Let's do it. Don, one thing I brought up, and we'll have these conversations in private, I'm sure, later. But I think it would be a good idea, and I think our callers would really appreciate hearing from you even during the off season, even if it's just once a month, kind of checking in and just talking football. I don't know, I know you're working on analytics during the off season and crunching the numbers from the previous season, but we can talk about that. But yes, I definitely like to get together with you this month after you have some time to look at Kentucky, and certainly I'll do the same, and we can break down. And I'd like to break. I mean, I'll be honest. Everybody gets excited for the NCAA tournament in March, and so do I. But I love the bowl season. I know there's too many bowls out there, but I love the bowl season, and I'm looking forward to picking my bowls and rooting for the Big Ten. And I know probably you're the same, Don. You really enjoy the bowl season, right? Even the little ones, the Louisiana Monroe versus Idaho, right?
Well, that brings up a good point. I spoke at the quarterback club here a couple of years ago, and they wanted me to speak, and it was about the bowl season. And somehow it came up, and I said, well, would you like me to actually do the analytics for the national championship game? And I did. And it was because they had a lot of interest, of course, in who's going to win the game. And I could do that all over again, too. I kind of hate to mess with the semifinal games as well as the championship game, but if you guys would like for me to do the analytics on the championship game, I'd consider doing that, too.
Absolutely. That would be a joy. And Kevin, I'm not trying to make an excuse for Iowa. I'm just saying why coaches, I think he's referring to my comment about why coaches why Iowa's not landing coaches from the likes of Alabama. I just don't think it's one of the more attractive jobs from the outside. Don, would you agree with that? I know you love the job, and I think you think Iowa is a great place to live, but don't you think coaches who are under Nick Saban and Dabo Sweeney, don't you think these guys are looking for jobs down south and jobs in bigger markets?
I don't know. I haven't been to the national convention in recent years. When you go to the convention every year, of course, coaches in all parts of the country, and you have a chance to interact with so many coaches that you didn't know before the convention. But I'm out of touch now because I haven't been to the convention in recent years. I don't honestly know if that's true. It might not. Certainly, you'd have to say that I was very competitive in terms of salary. I was competitive enough to be able to hire anyone. And I think to visit Iowa or to live in Iowa is to appreciate Iowa. A lot of people have never been here of any length of time. I think they're always surprised when they visit as they get to know the people. Midwestern people are wonderful. I grew up in Texas. They're not much different at all in Texas than they are up here. But I think they are different in certain parts of the country. And, you can count on the fact that in Iowa, you're going to have great neighbors and you're going to have great friends, and, people care about their country and people certainly support their athletic teams. So it's a wonderful place to live, I think.
I just want to address this one more time, and then we can let it go. But a comment from, I'm assuming, a Michigan fan. He says, Iowa fans can't keep bragging about that 2016 win. no more, even though they lost in 2019. Keep saying Michigan ran the score up, but Iowa didn't stop them. Don, I want to address that real quickly. The reason why you had an issue with the score being run up specifically was because Jim Harbaugh deployed trick plays. So it wasn't just that they scored in their base offense. They went out of their way to run a trick play in a situation where you're leading by 30. Correct?
Yeah, in 37 years of coaching, I can't remember a single case in which a team had the game easily won, clearly won, and resorted to trick plays late in the game. It's unheard of. And I would say against a lot of opponents, maybe I wouldn't think it was such a big deal, but against Kirk Ferentz's team, you got to be kidding me. It's disrespectful. Kirk doesn't deserve that. And I'm disappointed that it happened.
And here's what I'll say.
Having said that, I'm still going to cheer for Michigan, but I just think we need good sportsmanship in all aspects of athletics. And on Saturday, last night, we didn't see good sportsmanship. That's all.
And here's what I'll say too. I know some Michigan fans defended Jim Harbaugh, and I didn't have a huge. I'll be honest with Don. I didn't have a huge issue with it. You saw something that I didn't see, and of course, you've been there. You understand the unwritten code, the unwritten rule there. I heard some Michigan fans saying, well, they were honoring the number 42, the kid that was murdered brutally in Michigan, which is terrible. And I was so happy to see Michigan honoring him with those insignias on their jersey. I think that was the right thing to do. I don't know that running the score up to 42 and what we would both probably consider not the most sportsmanlike thing to do. I don't know that honors somebody who happened to wear that number. I don't know that that's the best way to go about honoring him. And if that's what they were trying to do, I applaud the motive, but I don't think that was the best way to go about that, Don. But right. Absolutely, what happened in Oxford, just absolutely terrible. And certainly thoughts and prayers to the family and friends that lost people in that shooting. But I agree with you, Don. It's one of those things that you wish didn't happen. And again, I don't have an issue with Jim Harbaugh. I'd say for the most part, I've never had an issue never had a reason not to respect Jim Harbaugh. I don't put Jim Harbaugh in the same bag as James Franklin and PJ Fleck that are kind of self-promoters. Maybe he's a bit of a self-promoter. He's an NFL guy. He's obviously a popular guy, right? He has success at Michigan as a quarterback, but he's not Scott Frost. So I'll give him that. Appreciate, again, all the kind words here this evening from, again, Michigan fans, from Iowa fans, certainly. And, again, if anybody I want to throw this out there as well. I know we probably brought this up earlier, and maybe I didn't, but we got 168 people on here. Of course, we're going to be right here at Iowa at the Voice of College Football, and then over at my channel, From the Hawkeye of the Storm, we're going to be previewing Iowa versus Kentucky throughout the month. If you want to sponsor our bowl preview, all right, if you want to sponsor our bowl coverage, our Citrus Bowl coverage, please reach out to us, all right? Reach out to us here from the Hawkeye of the Storm or Iowa at the Voice of College Football. We are still, every week, 4:30 p.m. right here, Iowa at the Voice of College Football. We will be hosting Iowa Live with the one and only Mark Rogers, 4:30 p.m. Central Time. All right, 4:30 p.m. Central Time weekly. And, of course, we'll probably be talking about Xavier Nwampa's decision on Wednesday. We'll be previewing that. And then, of course, you're welcome to donate to the Voice of College Football below. You can donate by way of Super Chat, Super Sticker. You can make a donation through PayPal, Venmo. However you want to help the show out, we appreciate that. And most of all, we appreciate when you share our show out in social media. And again, one more time for From the Hawkeye of the Storm. This is where we have our basketball show. We'll have it tomorrow night with Coach Close. And Don, you'll be at the game. So you'll be yes. Don's not a one-trick pony. Don, you could go toe-to-toe, maybe not with Coach Close, but you could go toe-to-toe with me on basketball.
I don't know basketball very well. But as one old coach pointed out one time, how complicated could it be? There's only 10 people out there. It's more complicated than any of us realize, I'm sure.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And for the record, we didn't talk about this, obviously, because we were focused on the Big Ten Championship. A heck of an effort from Iowa basketball on Friday night in West Lafayette. I mean, without Keegan Murray, and Iowa fights back. Just incredible effort by Iowa. So I hope the fans show up tomorrow night, Don. That team needs them. I think the team deserves them. I think they're fighting hard right now. It's a young group. I just hope that Iowa fans aren't down on football and don't show up to basketball, because that's a big game tomorrow. Just a second.
Yeah, that's terribly unfair to our basketball team, and those guys deserve everyone's support because they really represented well on Friday night.
Absolutely. The real Hayden says he'll see you at the game tomorrow night, Don, and Pat says he would love Don doing the analytics for us. So, and of course, he wants to thank you for staying all 20 years with Hayden Fry.
It was a good decision to stay. I haven't regretted it.
All right, Don. You and I will talk, and if anybody wants to stay up to date on when we're going live again, make sure you're subscribed to this channel, Iowa at the Voice of College Football. We will release a post announcing when we're going live again. You can also follow me on Twitter, From the Hawkeye of the Storm. It's From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. We'll announce when we're going live with Coach Patterson again. We'll figure out what works best for you, Don, if you want to do it before bowl season starts. I mean, bowl season, when does bowl season start? Is it mid-December?
I'm not sure anymore.
Or is it like tomorrow?
No, I think it's maybe mid-December.
Okay. Army-Navy. We haven't talked about Army-Navy. That's this coming weekend, correct?
Yes, and I will be part of a watch party involving mostly West Point grads. I think maybe a few Annapolis guys will be there. They're allowed to attend. It's at the Rock Island Arsenal, which makes sense because that is a small military base. And we have a traditional gathering there. And I'll say this, I've already made plans. Lisa and I've already talked about it. A year from now, we will be at Army-Navy for a very good reason. My last Army-Navy game was fall of 72, and that will be 50 years ago next December. So next December in the year 2022, I'll be celebrating a 50-year reunion with my classmates and teammates, and I'm looking forward to that. And I don't even know where it's going to be played. I jokingly said, normally it's in Philadelphia. That's the traditional place, but it's been in Baltimore some. It's at East Rutherford this year. I think because of 9/11, I believe, 20-year reunion or anniversary of 9/11. That's why they're having it, across the river from New York City. And I jokingly said they've also had it in the Rose Bowl at times, and knowing how likely it'll be in the Rose Bowl, Lisa said, "Well, let's just at that point we'll just take a trip to California." So when you're retired, you can do stuff like that. So we're gonna be at the game wherever it is because it'll be 50 years removed from my last Army-Navy game, and I look forward to it. And I have great confidence it'll be another Army win.
Well, I would say the same thing. I will say this: that's always just such a physical, hard-fought game. I mean, there's just so much. Let me mention
this, Corey, because I think it's worth mentioning to the listeners. If you ever have an opportunity to attend Army-Navy, you'd be crazy not to take advantage of it because it really is a spectacle. If you can imagine the entire Corps of Cadets on the football field all at once, 4,000 plus cadets, or for that matter, the entire brigade of midshipmen on the field all at once, 4,000 Naval Academy midshipmen. It makes you proud to be an American. It really does. These are wonderful young men and women that have chosen to risk their life and attend a service academy. And you get a great education, of course, but you also have an obligation to spend time in the service afterward. And obviously, that might involve some really hazardous duty. But that's the price that we're all prepared to pay because it really matters to us a lot what kind of country we're going to have going forward. So I'm thankful for all those young men and women that think that the service academies are great ideas.
Don, it's been a pleasure. As always, appreciate you sticking with us for the long haul. I know the weekend didn't go as anyone here in Iowa, Hawkeye Nation wanted. But the sun did rise this morning. It will rise tomorrow on an Iowa basketball team primed for a win and an Iowa football team that's going to be beginning prep for a trip to Orlando for the first time, I believe, since the 2005 Drew Tate to Warren Holloway throw down against LSU. So let's hope there's another great memory from Iowa, Kentucky, and we'll talk to you as soon as possible.
I look forward to it, Corey. Have a great night.
All right. For Coach Don Patterson, I'm Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Again, Join us tomorrow night from the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube for Iowa Basketball Postgame with Coach Gary Close following Iowa versus Illinois. Have a great night.